Chapter 1876. Zhou Zhou looked at the information of the king after the breakthrough and could not help but click his tongue. Before officially breaking through to the Supreme Will Realm, his king could only control all the abilities and cultivation under him 1000 times. After breaking through to the Supreme Will Realm, this 1000 times directly became 5000 times. Which meant, if he had a low-level Supreme Will Realm subordinate under him, then after he was enhanced by the king, he could directly have the combined strength of 5000 low-level Supreme Will Realm experts. And how many Supreme Will Realm subordinates did he have under him? Answer: 22 Supreme Will Realm subordinates. Which meant, once he used the king, just the subordinates at the Supreme Will Realm could provide he with the combined strength of 55,000 Supreme Will Realm experts. Ignoring everything else, just the combined strength of these 55,000 Supreme Will Realm experts was comparable to a low-level will. Considering the other methods that Zhou Zhou had, his current strength was probably not inferior to a mid-level willpower expert. And as the number and level of willpower skills he mastered increased, his strength would continue to increase. When he thought of his bright future, a smile couldn't help but appear on his face. Then, he stood up and looked out. It seems that many experts are paying attention to me. Then let's go out and take a look. Show your strength at the right time. Zhou Zhou smiled faintly and muttered to himself. Then, with a thought, he disappeared from the reincarnation sacred palace. In the sky above blazing sun divine capital, Zhou Zhou's figure appeared. He cupped his fists at the stars in the sky and smiled. Seniors, I should be able to become the protagonist of tonight's welcome banquet. Seniors, please do me the honor of participating in this welcome banquet. Only a Supreme Will Realm expert could hear these words. When the Supreme Will Realm experts heard that, they hurriedly revealed their true bodies or projections in the stars. They bowed respectfully to Zhou Zhou and said, "Congratulations to senior common people for advancing to the Supreme Will Realm and increasing your strength by a large level. We will definitely arrive on time for tonight's welcome banquet to witness senior common people's advancement." The words of the Supreme Will Realm experts were very polite and even a little flattering. However, they did not think that there was anything wrong with this. Between the strong, strength reigned supreme. If you were strong, you could stand above they and make they address you respectfully as a senior. Before this common people's regal advanced to the Supreme Will Realm, he could already kill a low-level Will Realm expert. Now that Ila's strength had advanced to a major level and he had officially stepped into the Supreme Will Realm, his strength would definitely increase greatly again. Perhaps he already had the strength of a mid-level willpower. Facing such a powerful existence with stronger potential, even if he had only risen for a short period of time and had just called himself a junior not long ago, they still had to humble themselves and speak respectfully to him. They even had to deliberately curry favor with him. It was very real, but this was reality. At this moment, Zhou Zhou could clearly sense the difference in their attitude towards him. That was a completely different attitude from when he was only a quasi-supreme will realm expert. Previously, even though they was very polite and respectful to him, it was mostly because of his ability to nurture a Supreme Will Realm expert and his reserve army status as a Supreme Lord. There was also strength, but not much. At that time, even though he already had the strength comparable to a top Supreme Will Realm expert, his realm was not. Even if other Supreme Will Realm experts knew that they had the strength of a top Supreme Will Realm expert, they still more or less looked down on their quasi-Supreme Will Realm aura, but they would not show it. However, this contempt was gone. Not only that, their current attitude towards Zhou Zhou even had the attitude of a powerhouse who looked at the future. Zhou Zhou liked their attitude very much. At this moment, 3 figures flew over from afar and quickly arrived in front of Zhou Zhou. They were God King Heaven Punishment, Spring Autumn Dharma Lord, and Lord of 10,000 Evils. Congratulations to third brother for advancing to the Supreme Will Realm. God King Heaven Punishment and the rest congratulated. I was lucky. Zhou Zhou smiled. The God King Heaven Punishment chuckled when he heard them. If even Zhou Zhou's advancement to the Supreme Will Realm could be described as luck, wouldn't the difficulty of advancing to the Supreme Will Realm be too great? Most Supreme Gods would probably not be able to advance to the Supreme Will Realm. Being overly humble is being too proud of third brother. Furthermore, I'm a lord. It's normal for me to have the thought of recruiting him. When I see such an expert. Zhou Zhou was speechless. He was just used to keeping a low profile. Other than congratulating you on advancing to the Supreme Will Realm, I'm here with the Spring Autumn Dharma Lord and Lord of 10,000 Evils to send our Congratulatory gifts. This is my gift. With that said, God King Heaven Punishment waved Eli's right hand and two items appeared in front of him. One of the items was completely red and looked like a peach, but it emitted a stench. Even though Zhou Zhou's will had already reached the low-level Supreme Will realm, he still could not help but want to cover his nose in the face of this stench. This made he secretly alarmed. What kind of fruit was this that it actually smelled so bad that even him, a low-level Supreme Will realm expert, could not stand it? The second item was a golden cloth with dense words engraved on it. Those were words of will. Only experts who had grasped the power of will could understand the meaning. It was words of a higher dimension than the nomological divine runic. Chapter 1877. Zhou Zhou glanced at it and wanted to read it out loud. Don't. The God King Heaven Punishment hurriedly reminded, this is not the inheritance of our Supreme Great Cosmos, but a top-notch will inheritance called the Heart Great Cosmos. Their cultivation system is completely different from ours. If you read it out loud, this cultivation technique will be restricted by the origin will of the Supreme Great Cosmos. You won't be able to cultivate this inheritance. Isn't the origin will of the Supreme Great Cosmos our Supreme Will? Zhou Zhou looked puzzled. The Supreme will restrict us. Of course the Supreme Will won't. The God King Heaven Punishment said helplessly, but ever since the Supreme Will established the Supreme Great Cosmos, it separated the origin will of the Supreme Great Cosmos from its body. Now the two are in a master-subordinate relationship. Under normal circumstances, the Supreme Will rarely interferes with the operation of the Supreme Origin Will. That's because it's the most fair and follows the law of development of all things. Therefore, if we accidentally leak this cultivation technique so that you can't cultivate it, there's a high chance that the Supreme Will won't stand up for us. Instead, he will treat this matter as a punishment for us not considering everything and make us remember it. Zhou Zhou was speechless. Even though the Supreme Will's personality was gentle and amiable, he did seem to be capable of such a thing. I understand. Then, as long as I learn this inheritance outside the Supreme Great Cosmos, I won't attract the attention of the origin will of the Supreme Great Cosmos. Zhou Zhou asked. Third brother is right. That's it. God King Heaven Punishment smiled and nodded, as long as you casually let a clone learn this inheritance outside the Supreme Great Cosmos, there won't be a problem. As long as you finish learning, the origin will of the Supreme Great Cosmos will no longer care about you in this universe, be it cultivation or use. Because he seems to only care about your studies. As for what happens after that, he ignores it. I've personally verified this kind of thing. You can rest assured. Furthermore, I'm a lord. It's normal for me to have the thought of recruiting him when I see such an expert. Zhou Zhou clicked his tongue. Was this considered turning a blind eye in a certain sense? Then, he directly put this inheritance into his number 1 treasure vault for the time being. Then, he got Zhou Shizi and Zhou 15, who were in the ultimate void great cosmos, to gather resources and cultivate the will inheritance of this heart great cosmos. Zhou 14 and Zhou 15 quickly received news of Zhou Zhou and took out the will inheritance of the heart great cosmos. Then, they learned that the legacy of the great cosmos of their heart was the origin of will. It was a simple and crude name. Through his understanding, Zhou Zhou learned that the greatest effect of the origin of heart was that it could increase the quality and level of the power of will by cultivating this inheritance. At the same time, it had a secret technique called the all-origin as one. The effect of the all-origin as one was that it could summon the main bodies of the other alternate timelines in advance to suppress him by using the all-origin as one. As for cultivators, they could greatly increase their cultivation speed at the Supreme Will realm by destroying the alternate timeline's main body and fusing it. Moreover, there were almost no summoning restrictions for this kind of early summoning. If one had enough courage and strength, a Supreme Will realm expert could even continuously summon the alternate timeline main body to suppress them and defeat and fuse with the other party to increase their cultivation speed. However, once he summoned an extremely powerful alternate timeline main body, this summoning might bring him trouble or even a life and death crisis. Therefore, there were advantages and disadvantages to this secret technique. If he did not want to advance quickly, he would actually be like an ordinary Supreme Will realm expert. While cultivating to increase his strength and accumulating various trump cards, he would wait for a new round of alternate timelines to descend. Then, he would cycle it until he advanced to the Will Transcendence realm. This was the safest and most stable way to advance. The all-origin as one was actually a little anxious to succeed. However, Zhou Zhou needed such a fast cultivation method. His potential was publicly recognized as the potential of his will to transcend. He even had the strength comparable to the mid-level will to transcend. With his strength and his potential, there was no need for him to stay in the Supreme Will realm for too long. That would be a waste of time. Furthermore, with his strength that transcended the level of a mid-level will, even if all the Supreme Will realm alternate timeline main bodies were found, they would not be his match. This was because the alternate timeline main body summoned by a Supreme Will realm expert would definitely not have the strength of a will. Otherwise, wouldn't most Supreme Will realm experts die at the Supreme Will realm? That was why Zhou Zhou felt that this all origin as one was very suitable for him. He immediately made a decision for himself. That was to make good use of this all origin as one and advance to a willpower expert as soon as possible. At the Supreme Will realm, he did not want to stay any longer. Thank you, big brother. This legacy is very important to me. Zhou Zhou said seriously to God King Heaven Punishment. We're brothers. Why are you talking about this? And I didn't give it to you for nothing. I'm still waiting for you to nurture a few Supreme Will realm experts for me. Furthermore, I'm a lord. It's normal for me to have the thought of recruiting him. When I see such an expert. Yes, big brother. Zhou Zhou smiled and said, brother, you should be able to see the Supreme Will realm subordinate you are longing for later. Really? The God King Heaven Punishment's eyes lit up as he asked. When have I ever lied? Zhou Zhou asked with a smile. That's great. God King Heaven Punishment was overjoyed. Third brother, you've helped me a lot. The situation at the Dusk battlefield is very tense now. I need a strong person to help me. If you nurture a Supreme Will realm expert for me, you can help me relieve a lot of pressure. It's good that you can help big brother. Zhou Zhou smiled and nodded. Third brother, what about me? Spring Autumn Dharma Lord asked impatiently. He had no choice but to do so. This was a subordinate of a Supreme Will realm expert, not a Supreme God. Didn't they see that even the Supreme Will would specially hold a welcome ceremony for the birth of a new Supreme Will realm? It was normal for them to care so much about having an additional Supreme Will realm subordinate under them. Second brother, don't worry. You have one too. You'll see it later. Zhou Zhou smiled and nodded. If nothing unexpected happened, the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom would give birth to 15 Supreme Will realm experts today. 2 of them belonged to the Great Lunar Court and the Sun Divine Court, 1 belonged to God King Heaven Punishment, and the other belonged to the Spring Autumn Dharma Lord. Therefore, he did not lie to them. The Spring Autumn Dharma Lord laughed and said, then third brother will be able to receive the good news from you. After the Spring Autumn Dharma Lord finished laughing, God King Heaven Punishment introduced another red fruit and said, this is a fruit I found on a strange tree in a mystic realm called the Boundless Mystic Realm. When I found it, there were a total of 3 fruits on it. When I was at the middle stage Supreme Will realm, I consumed a mutant tree fruit. In the end, it directly raised my will realm from the mid-level Supreme Will realm to the high-level Supreme Will realm. I wanted to take the remaining 2, but the mutant tree told me that I can only take one of these mutant fruits. Not only is it useless if I take too many, but it's also harmful. I felt that the mutant tree didn't lie to me, so I left it behind. Later, I wanted to give the Spring Autumn Dharma Lord one, but the Spring Autumn Dharma Lord said that he had already consumed a similar fruit. It was useless to consume it again, so I didn't give it to him. Now, I'll give you one of them. Your will has just entered the low-level Supreme Will realm. This mutant fruit should be able to greatly increase your will realm. As for the last one, I plan to leave it to fourth brother. After fourth brother advances to the Supreme Will realm, I'll give this last mutant fruit to Ilum. Chapter 1878. Look, this is the gift I promised you before. Take a look. He waved his right hand, and 2 items appeared in front of Zhou Zhou. Zhou Zhou looked over and the item on the left was a fishing rod. This fishing rod was completely purple and had the appearance of a great cosmos engraved on its surface. It emitted the aura of a holy artifact. It was a low-level holy artifact. Transcend holy artifacts. Zhou Zhou blurted out in surprise. Wasn't the reward he and the Spring Autumn Dharma Lord had previously agreed on a set of top-notch will holy artifact level fishing gear? Why did it level up? The God King Heaven Punishment looked at the Spring Autumn Dharma Lord with a strange gaze. Didn't he know about this fellow? Why was he suddenly willing to give away such a valuable treasure today even though he had a temperament like a miser? Furthermore, it was his favorite fishing rod. Even he didn't have many low-level fishing rods that surpassed holy artifacts, right? He was actually willing to take them out as a congratulatory gift to his third brother? The Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord looked at this fishing rod with his eyes filled with reluctance. However, he still forced a smile and said, "This fishing rod is called the Nine Song. It's a low-level fishing rod that transcends the holy artifact level. It can fish out treasures with transcendent willpower. The highest it can fish out is a treasure with transcendent upper willpower. I heard that among the previous owners of this fishing rod, there was a record of using it to fish out an eternal immortal realm treasure. Of course, I don't know if it's true or not. I've only heard of it. Anyway, it's a very precious fishing rod. I think third brother is also interested in fishing. If you use it to fish, the harvest will definitely not disappoint you." The Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord's heart was still bleeding out after he finished speaking. Just as God King Heaven Punishment had said, even he did not have many fishing rods that transcended the level of holy artifacts. He naturally did not want to give it away. In fact, he had previously agreed to give Zhou Zhou a top-notch Supreme Will Realm fishing rod. However, there was no choice. Among the two gifts that God King Heaven Punishment beside he took out, the mutant fruit was still alright. It could be considered a top Supreme Will Realm treasure. However, that will source inheritance was a true will transcendence inheritance. In fact, among the transcendent inheritances, the will source was considered precious. At this moment, if he still took out the Supreme Will Realm treasure that he had previously agreed on, there would be no problem. This was what they had agreed on after all. However, he was still at a disadvantage. Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord was not someone who liked to compare. However, as a Supreme Lord's reserve army, the thing the God King Heaven Punishment took out was so good, but he took out a will holy artifact level fishing gear. It was as if he did not know the value of Zhou Zhou being able to nurture subordinates of the Supreme Will Realm. Therefore, he could only change his mind at the last minute and take out this low-level fishing gear that transcended the level of a holy artifact with tears in his eyes. Seeing Zhou Zhou thank him as he took the 9 song that he had taken out, Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord comforted himself. "It is fine, it is fine. Isn't it just a low-level fishing gear that surpassed the holy artifact level?" In any case, he had fished this 9 song out of the myriad world's chaotic pool during the past 2 days in the Eternal Continent with the help of Zhou Fight's providence. He did not spend much effort on this. Since he had already given it away, he would pretend that he had never caught this fishing gear. However, even though he thought so, the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord was still filled with reluctance. "My fishing gear." On the surface, he looked as usual, looking very generous. Only the God King Heaven Punishment seemed to have seen through something. He looked at the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord with disdain. "You have already given it to me. What was the use of feeling heartache? Look at how stingy you are." At this moment, the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord forcefully diverted his attention and pointed at the token on his right. "This is my Spring-Autumn Treasury token. With this token, you can go to my Spring-Autumn Treasury. Inside contains all the treasures I obtained from the river of space-time and the myriad worlds chaotic pool, as well as some treasures I obtained from other places. I've placed everything that I can't use and that's valuable inside. The treasures inside are at least Supreme God level treasures. The highest is even Eternal Immortal Realm treasures. However, I didn't mark them. If you want to find precious treasures, it's all up to your judgment." Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord smiled and handed the token to Zhou Zhou. "With this token, you can enter my Spring-Autumn Treasury and take a treasure from it. Third brother, it's time to test your judgment." The Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord smiled smugly. The number of treasures in his Spring-Autumn Treasury was in the hundreds of millions. Furthermore, under his special settings, unless these treasures recognized their master, there was a high chance that they could not be determined by just observation. And how long had it been since his third brother rose to prominence? He did not believe that with his third brother's short experience, he could find the most precious treasure among the hundreds of millions of treasures. Oh! Zhou Zhou's eyes lit up. To the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord who had sat in the myriad worlds chaos pool for countless years, he must have unimaginable treasures. Their grade must be extremely high. At the thought that Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord had so many treasures, he became interested. He might as well take a look now since he had nothing to do now. He immediately told the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord about this idea. Chapter 1879. However, he didn't refuse. Alright, let's go now. I'll wait for you here. It was just a wait. As a mid-level Supreme Will Realm expert, he would spend tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of years fishing. Waiting here for a while was nothing. Furthermore, with Zhou Zhou's willpower, no matter how carefully he observed, he should be done in 2 to 3 days. 2 to 3 days passed in the blink of an eye for him. He could afford to wait. I'll wait for you to come out too. The God King Heaven Punishment was also interested. He wanted to see what treasure his third brother could find from the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord's Spring-Autumn Treasury and take it for himself. He had actually entered the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord's Spring-Autumn Treasury once by chance. The treasures inside made even him exclaim in surprise and envy. Even though his strength far exceeded that of the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord, he still knew his limits when it came to collecting treasures. It could be said that they could not be compared at all. Therefore, during that trip to the Spring-Autumn Treasury, he had only taken a low-level Will Holy artifact from it. This Will Holy artifact was completely useless to his strength. It even overlapped with the Will Holy artifact he had. In the end, he could only helplessly use it as a reward for his subordinates. He looked forward to seeing if Zhou Zhou could make Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord suffer over this matter as he had similar experiences. You don't have to wait that long. Zhou Zhou smiled and shook his head. Just wait for me for half an hour. The God King Heaven Punishment raised his eyebrows, looking forward to Zhou Zhou's performance. The Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord heaved a sigh of relief. It seemed like his third brother had no intention of taking the opportunity to trick him. As expected of a good brother. The Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord was touched. Okay, we'll wait for you. The Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord smiled. Zhou Zhou did not explain when he saw this. He held the token in his hand and injected the power of his will into it. As the power of will surged into the token gradually emitted a silver light. The light condensed into a bright silver spatial gate in the air. Zhou Zhou observed the spatial door for a few seconds before stepping in. Then, he raised his eyebrows slightly. He looked at the pure bright silver world in front of him and said in surprise. This aura is, the aura of the great cosmos. That's right. The Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord's voice sounded from the sky. There was a smile in his voice. This place was originally a great cosmos. Later, I fished it out of the myriad worlds chaotic pool. I saw that this great cosmos was very suitable for storing precious items, so I first moved all the natives in the great cosmos to another ownerless great cosmos. Then, I modified this great cosmos as a whole. After modifying it, I placed most of the treasures I didn't need into this great cosmos. It's been in my possession for almost 500,000 years. Zhou Zhou clicked his tongue. Even though he was already a Supreme Will Realm expert, he had never tried refining an entire great cosmos and turning it into his treasure vault. And from the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord's casual tone, he must have done this many times. He shook his head and stopped thinking about it. Then, Zhou Zhou looked around at the empty silver world and asked, where are the treasures? Hee. I'll show you now. Just as the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord finished speaking, they saw transparent balls of light appear everywhere in the silver space where Zhou Zhou was. There were all kinds of treasures in these transparent balls of light. For example, divine medicines, pill formulas, buildings, blueprints, sleeping living beings, small worlds, special life forms, miniature civilizations. There were all kinds of treasures. Furthermore, they were densely packed and there were many of them. As for their levels, the weakest was at the Grade 1 Supreme God level, and the highest was at the Will Transcendence level. Even though Zhou Zhou could not sense how high their grades were under the secret technique of the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord, Zhou Zhou could tell just based on their appearance. Second brother, oh second brother. Do you think it's very difficult for me to choose the most precious treasure from your treasures that exceed 100 million with my foundation and knowledge? However, you've overlooked something. The treasures I've seen and handled might be much more than you think. You're bringing a teacher into the rice cellar. With a relaxed mood, he emitted the power of will from the origin core of will. In the blink of an eye, it spread throughout the entire Spring-Autumn Treasury space. At the same time, he observed the appearance and characteristics of all the treasures. Through their appearance and characteristics, he determined how precious they were and if they were really suitable for him. 15 minutes later, Zhou Zhou had found his target. He stretched out his hand and beckoned. Not far away, an ancient mirror flew over and floated in front of him. It should be a low-level beyond holy artifact. Zhou Zhou looked at the mirror and nodded slightly in his heart. With his knowledge, there was a high chance that this was a low-level holy artifact. There was no mistake. Actually, there were other transcendent holy artifacts in this spring-autumn treasury. There was even a mid-level transcendent holy artifact. However, Zhou Zhou was not discouraged. That was because it was a fishing rod that had transcended the level of a holy artifact. The spring-autumn Dharma Lord should like it very much. If he took it, it would be a little like snatching what others liked. Furthermore, he had already obtained 2 holy artifacts that transcended the spring-autumn Dharma Lord. There was no need for him to be insatiable. If he really went to take the best treasures in the other party's treasure vault, he would make the situation ugly and ruin their relationship. He did not lack that mid-level beyond holy artifact. He didn't stay any longer and returned to the silver door of light and stepped out. In the next second, time and space changed. He had already arrived in front of the spring-autumn Dharma Lord and God King Heaven Punishment. You found the treasure you wanted so quickly. The spring-autumn Dharma Lord smiled. After he told Zhou Zhou about the origins of the spring-autumn treasury, he directly retreated. He did not watch Zhou Zhou's search for treasure. He did not expect Zhou Zhou to come out so quickly. Third brother, aren't you going to choose carefully? The God King Heaven Punishment smiled and persuaded, this guy has a lot of good things in his treasure vault. If you don't take a treasure with a transcendent will, I'll feel like you are losing out. The spring-autumn Dharma Lord actually said generously, big brother is right. Third brother, choose well. There's no hurry. We'll wait for you. The spring-autumn Dharma Lord had his own thoughts. He came out after only 15 minutes. Presumably, his third brother might have casually picked a treasure and come out. It might not even be a Supreme Will Realm treasure, but a Supreme God level treasure. Even though he did not want the precious treasures in the treasure vault to be lost, if he, the third brother he admired, left after taking just one Supreme God treasure, even someone as stingy as he would feel uneasy. There's no need. Zhou Zhou smiled and shook his head. He said mysteriously, and who said I didn't get anything good? Hey! The God King Heaven Punishment and the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord were stunned. How long has it been since Zhou Zhou entered the Spring-Autumn treasury? What good stuff could he find in such a short period of time? Zhou Zhou could tell what they was thinking from their expression. He had no intention of hiding anything. He opened his right hand, and an ancient mirror slowly appeared in his palm. As soon as this ancient mirror appeared, it was as if the seal had been lifted, emitting a shocking power and aura. Furthermore, this aura was the aura of a low-level holy artifact. God King Heaven Punishment and the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord were stunned when they saw this mirror. Especially the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord. He looked at the mirror with a bitter expression. Third brother, you actually got it. Zhou Zhou nodded. When I saw this mirror, I felt that this mirror was fated with me, so I brought it over. I saw a black fishing rod at first, but I thought that second brother liked to collect fishing gear the most, so I didn't take it. Zhou Zhou chuckled. When the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord heard Zhou Zhou mention the black fishing rod, his heart skipped a beat. And when he heard Zhou Zhou say that he liked to collect fishing rods, so he didn't take the black fishing rod, he immediately relaxed. A smile appeared on his face as he looked at Zhou Zhou with even more kindness. This brother was really generous. He could have taken the best thing, but he chose the bad one and left the best one for him. What a good brother! At this moment, the uncomfortable feeling that the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord had from losing a low-level holy artifact also disappeared. Chapter 1880. The two of them naturally did not refuse. Even though they had other things to do now, nothing could compare to improving their relationship with Zhou Zhou. Especially since the other party was not only the existence with the greatest potential in the ultimate void great cosmos, but he was also nurturing Supreme Will Realm experts for his faction. Anyone would feel that improving their relationship with Zhou Zhou was more important. The three of them entered Blazing Sun Shrine and sat down to chat. It was mainly because Zhou Zhou was chatting. The God King Heaven Punishment and the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord were a little distracted. Zhou Zhou smiled when he saw this. He could tell at a glance that they was paying attention to the Supreme Will Realm subordinate that was about to be born. He understood this feeling very well, so he didn't care about the duo's perfunctory attitude. He was still smiling and communicating with them. As they communicated, Zhou Zhou thought to himself and activated the Supreme Unique Lord talent that he had awakened today. He did not deliberately choose which Lord talent to improve the day before because he had to focus on advancing to the Supreme Will Realm. Therefore, the Lord talent that he upgraded today was completely a random Lord talent. Fortunately, Even if he was randomly promoted to a Lord Talent, the attributes and development potential of all his Lord Talents were not bad. Therefore, he was not afraid of wasting this opportunity to be promoted with a poor Lord Talent. He nodded slightly after he looked over. Did he choose this Lord Talent? It was all right. Protection of the original Supreme God Origin, Supreme Unique. Specific Talent Effect 1 Supreme Blessing of the Origin Supreme God under the command of the common people's regal has performed the Supreme Blessing on you and your subjects. You and your subjects have a large world that you can control freely in your bodies. This world can grow to the highest level of a grade 4 Supreme God. Specific Talent Effect 2 Great World God Lord, due to the great world in your body, your potential will increase by a large level, and it will be easier to increase your willpower level. The upper limit is a grade 4 Supreme God God Spirit. Specific Talent Effect 3 Regal Favor, you and the subjects under you are blessed by the providence of the common people's regal because you are a natural-born divine king and a common people's regal subject. Your providence is higher than most life forms. Under the care of the common people's regal, you can often turn misfortune into fortune when you encounter danger. It's also easier for you to obtain treasures and other resources that are difficult for most life forms to obtain. When the subjects under you die, the world in your bodies will absorb your corpses and strengthen the origin of your great world, becoming a part of the myriad worlds. Your subjects will not really die, but they will become the origin will of the great world. At the very least, they will have the strength of a God Spirit, but they can only live in their own great world and live eternally and coexist with the myriad worlds until they are destroyed. Specific Talent Effect 4 Supreme God Path, you and your subjects will not encounter any bottlenecks before advancing to the Supreme God Realm. The probability of breaking through the bottleneck and successfully advancing to the 4th Order Supreme God Realm after Grade 1 will increase by 50%. When you advance to the Supreme Will Realm, the probability of success will increase by 10%. After Zhou Zhou saw the effect of this new Supreme Unique Lord Talent, he nodded slightly. Even though part of the effect of this Lord Talent overlapped with the effects of the other Lord Talents that he had, these would fortunately not affect each other. In other words, even though their effects seemed to overlap, they had actually superimposed on each other. This was already very good. In particular, his third effect surprised Zhou Zhou. After the subjects died, they would become the world's will and at least have the strength of a God Spirit? Did that mean that they could still become God Spirits no matter how bad his subjects were? When Zhou Zhou thought of the number of subjects in the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom, he felt that it was ridiculous. How many God Spirits would the Supreme Great Cosmos have if they all became God Spirits? He shook his head and stopped thinking about it. No matter how many God Spirits there were, they were useless to him. This was because the God Spirits that were reincarnated after death could only have combat power at the God Spirit level in their own world. In other words, they could only protect themselves and could not be sent out to fight the enemy with the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom's army. From the looks of it, it was best for the subjects not to die. As long as the subjects did not die, with their potential as Grade 4 Supreme Gods, they could easily become true God tier, Master God tier, or even a Supreme God after all. With his help, it was not impossible for them to advance to the Supreme Will Realm. Wasn't this much better than being a god who could only guard his home after death? He stopped thinking about it. When he returned to his senses, they saw that God King Heaven Punishment and they were still chatting as they waited for the birth of their Supreme Will Realm subordinates. He smiled to himself and said, "Eldest brother, second brother, third brother, I still have something to deal with. You guys chat here first. I'll come back later. Go on." The God King Heaven Punishment smiled and said, "You're the ruler of the Supreme God Nation. There's no need to delay things. You're just chatting beside us." "That's right." The Spring Autumn Dharma Lord nodded in agreement. The two of them had already gotten rid of their status as lords, so they did not have so many miscellaneous matters on them. Chapter 1881. He was the master of a divine kingdom, so he was naturally different from them. He had to do whatever that was required and could not be delayed. "That's not true." Zhou Zhou corrected with a smile. "I'm chatting with my two brothers. No matter how boring it is, it's not considered chatting. That's called discussing the future development of the Supreme Great Cosmos." Ha 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 ha. The God King Heaven Punishment and the Spring Autumn Dharma Lord were amused by Zhou Zhou's words. However, Zhou Zhou was right. The three of them were the reserve army of the Supreme Lords and each controlled an important territory. The future of the Supreme Great Cosmos was destined to belong to them. Every word and action of theirs could indeed affect the future development of the Supreme Great Cosmos. Zhou Zhou smiled and said a few more words before getting up to leave. He left the shrine and went to Mu Gu's mansion first, waiting for Wu Xian to fly out of the original Scarlet Brood Mother. A moment later, a golden stream of light flew out of the Scarlet Brood Mother and landed on the ground. It was Wu Xian. "Greetings, Your Majesty," Wu Xian said respectfully. "You are a little later than usual," Zhou Zhou stated with a smile. "Your Majesty, I had no choice." Wu Xian smiled and said, "It's just that the 3 Scarlet Brood Mothers today produced too many nest monsters. This is the first time I've seen so many nest monsters today. I was delayed because I wanted to lead the Homeland Defense Army to kill them all." Zhou Zhou smiled and nodded. He naturally knew how terrifying the number of nest monsters in the 3 Scarlet Brood Mothers was. Therefore, he naturally had no intention of blaming Wu Xian. Wu Xian heaved a sigh of relief seeing that Zhou Zhou had no intention of blaming him. Then, he handed the 3 world rings filled with loots to Zhou Zhou respectfully. Zhou Zhou took it and looked over expectantly. One of the world rings was filled with a sea of loots, 6 times more than before. The second world rings contained a total of 1,500 Gai Unit Supreme God Realm Soldier Recruitment Books and 1,500 Gai Unit Supreme Holy Mage God Recruitment Books. The other world rings contained 1,500 Gai Unit Supreme God Realm Soldier Class Change Certificate and 1,500 Gai Unit Supreme Holy Mage God Class Change Certificate. When Zhou Zhou saw this, he suppressed the smile on his face. However, he was extremely excited. This was a total of 6,000 Gai Unit Recruitment Books and Class Change Certificate. If he used them all, he could directly add 6,000 new Gai Unit Legendary Tier Elementary Grade troops to his Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom. He only had 1,000 Gai Unit troops under his command. After this recruitment and class change, the total number of troops under him could directly increase by 6 times. Just thinking about it made Zhou Zhou feel refreshed. With this 7,000 Gai Unit army as the foundation, the number of God spirits born in the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom every day could increase by 6 times. Moreover, the number of increases would increase. Zhou Zhou had a premonition. Perhaps it wouldn't be long before the number of God spirits under him exceeded the number of all the God spirits in the Supreme Great Cosmos. After Zhou Zhou was overjoyed, he immediately handed the class change certificate to Wu Xian and asked him to find a reserve recruit to change his profession to Supreme God Realm Soldier and Supreme Holy Mage God. As for Zhou Zhou, he immediately left Mu Gu's blessed land and flew out of the Divine Kingdom world to the Gate of Summoning. He called over a Grade 1 Supreme God level cosmic battleship as usual. Then, he threw all 120 Gai Unit recruitment books into the Gate of Summoning. Then, he spent 100 Grade 1 Supreme God Divine Crystals to recruit them and arranged for them to be in this cosmic battleship. Then, Zhou Zhou spent another 100 Grade 1 Supreme God Divine Crystals to summon today's subject. This time, he summoned a total of more than 220 billion subjects. He summoned more than 50 billion subjects than usual, including 15 Grade 1 Supreme God spirits. Then, he went to Jade Capital Immortal Mountain alone. After spending 1,000 low-tier deity-level elementary grade divine crystals, he summoned 100 heavenly soldiers, heavenly generals, and heavenly venerates of the capital units. At this moment, swoosh, 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 swoosh. A total of 3,712,381 nomological pillars of light soared into the sky from the direction of the Reincarnation Sacred Palace. Right on the heels of that, another 50 completely different starry sky phenomena appeared in the sky filled with stars. It was the cosmic phenomenon of a master god tier becoming a supreme god. Then, boom, 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 boom. A total of 15 light pillars of different colors shot into the starry sky. The great lunar sun quietly hid its light, and so did the stars in the sky. At this moment, it was as if the entire myriad worlds were restraining their light for the owner of the 15 pillars of will, making them the only protagonist. The experts of the myriad worlds who noticed this scene were also shocked again. This is too fucking ridiculous. Yesterday, there were 7 quasi-supreme will realm experts who had advanced to the supreme will realm. Today, there are actually 15 new supreme will realm experts born. When did Supreme Will Realm experts be born so easily? I'm probably dreaming. This is really an absurd dream. Alright, I admit that I don't even dare to do this in my dreams. 15 newly advanced Supreme Will Realm experts are too ridiculous. It's another Supreme Will Realm expert nurtured by the common people's regal. There are already more than 20 Supreme Will Realm experts under the common people's regal. It's equivalent to half the number of Supreme Will Realm experts in the entire Supreme Great Cosmos. What's the point of competing with these few Supreme Lord Reserve armies? Just let the common people's regal inherit the position of the Supreme Will. Even though this person's words are a little arbitrary, I, the loyal supporter of the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord, actually feel that it makes sense. There are a total of 25 Supreme Will Realm experts under the common people's regal, right? To be precise, there should be 21. According to my exclusive information, among the 15 newly advanced Supreme Will Realm experts, 4 belong to the Regal Great Solar, the Regal Great Lunar, the God King Heaven Punishment, and the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord. Among these 15 newly advanced Supreme Will Realm experts, only 11 belong to the common people's regal. Only. Brother, how did you say that? Oh, it's Big Boss Black Dragon Will. Big Boss, you're right. Even though that's the case, the common people's regal is indebted to the Supreme Will Realm powerhouses nurtured by these 4 venerables for their advancement. Even if these newly advanced Supreme Will Realm powerhouses return to the subordinates of the Regal Great Solar, they won't be able to reject the common people's regal's request for help in the future. Otherwise, they won't be able to pass through their own will. There's nothing wrong with that. The further one goes on the path of will, the more they care about karma. From the moment these 4 newly advanced Supreme Will Realm experts advanced in the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom, they have already been labeled as the common people's regal. I'm at the Quasi-Supreme Will Realm. I also want to be labeled. Dream on. There's everything in a dream. The Divine Spirits and the Supreme Will Realm experts were discussing the matter of these 15 newly advanced Supreme Will Realm experts crazily. Especially those Supreme Will Realm experts who were still chatting at the welcome banquet laughed out loud. I knew it. Let's wait here. The common people's regal will definitely not disappoint us. He will definitely nurture a new Supreme Will Realm expert. Am I right? It's only meaningful to wait like this. Hehe, there's no need to run back and forth today. Let's continue waiting. The banquet will start again tonight. Tisk tisk, thanks to the common people's regal. After these few days, I'm almost tired of eating delicacies with transcendent willpower. I've really never had such an experience in the past. If you're tired of it, don't snatch it from me. Give me what you have. I still want to eat them, but you packed it all up. Go away, go away. There will definitely be new transcendent level delicacies coming up tonight. Why are you snatching mine? Do you think the common people's regal will nurture more new Supreme Will Realm cultivators tomorrow? It's a little difficult, but I choose to believe in His Highness, the common people's regal. I choose to believe in him too. I'm not leaving tomorrow nor the day after tomorrow. I just want to see how many Supreme Will Realm experts His Highness, the common people's regal, can nurture. I have the same plan. Count me in. Count me in. Ha ha ha, what a rare occasion. In that case, count me in. Chapter 1882. Swoosh. Swoosh. 2 figures appeared out of thin air. They were God King Heaven Punishment and the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord, who had just been chatting in the shrine. The 2 of them had no intention of chatting to begin with. They were both waiting for their Supreme Will Realm subordinates to be born. Now that they saw that they had successfully advanced, they naturally could not help but be anxious and ran out to personally watch. When they saw the 15 pillars of will that soared into the sky, the shock in their eyes was indescribable. Having heard of it was one thing, but seeing it with their own eyes was another. To be able to see 15 Supreme Will Realm experts being born together with their own eyes, not to mention in the Supreme Great Cosmos, even in the entire Ultimate Void Great Cosmos, they might not be able to see such a scene. They felt that they had learned something new. And when they saw 2 familiar pillars of willpower, the joy in their eyes was about to overflow. That was because they were their subordinates. Now, they was going to have a new Supreme Will Realm subordinate. At this moment, the figures of Regal Great Solar and Regal Great Lunar also appeared not far from them. After they arrived, they immediately looked at the 2 pillars of willpower in the 15 pillars of willpower. Those were the pillars of willpower emitted by the 2 supreme gods sent by them. Back when they first came, they were only grade 4 supreme gods. He was already a Supreme Will Realm expert. The 2 top existences of the Supreme Great Cosmos were a little dazed when they recalled their experiences in the past few days. This was really like a dream. What methods did this common people's regal have? Why were there so many Supreme Will Realm experts in his hands? The two regals clicked their tongues in wonder. Regal Great Solar, Regal Great Lunar. X2. The God King Heaven Punishment and the Spring Autumn Dharma Lord said politely to the two regals. Your Majesties are here too. The Regal Great Solar chuckled and said, looks like the two of you have gained something too. Not bad. The two of us also had a Supreme God subordinate who advanced to the Supreme Will Realm under Third Brother's nurturing. Furthermore, I'm a lord. It's normal for me to have the thought of recruiting him when I see such an expert. Congratulations! Congratulations, Your Majesties! The two of them bowed to each other and waited for the 15 Supreme Will Realm experts to completely advance. Zhou Zhou was also looking up at their advancement. At this moment, an existence emitting a pure white light appeared beside Zhou Zhou. It was the Supreme Will. Greetings, Lord Supreme Will. Zhou Zhou smiled. Tell me, what Lord Talent do you want to increase this time? The Supreme Will asked with a smile. And it's the Supreme Lord Talent. Zhou Zhou probed. Why? You don't like the reward I gave you now that your Supreme Sacred Body is about to advance to the Supreme Will Realm? The Supreme Will asked with a smile. I wouldn't dare. Zhou Zhou shook his head helplessly. The Supreme Will watched him for a while before continuing. How about this? If you can nurture 50 Supreme Will Realm experts, I'll raise any of your Lord Talents to the Transcendent level, unique Lord Talent. How about that? Okay. Thank you, Lord Supreme Will. Zhou Zhou agreed without hesitation. This was the only Transcendent Lord Talent. Who knew how long it would take if he relied on itself to raise the Supreme Sacred Body to the level of the Transcendent Supreme Sacred Body and use the Supreme Sacred Body to create the Transcendent One Lord Talent? He already had the strength of a low-level or even a mid-level Transcendent level expert. His future opponents would probably be at this level. Therefore, he urgently needed the Transcendent Lord Talent to increase his strength. Even though the Supreme Lord Talent could also increase his strength, Zhou Zhou was no longer satisfied with such a small increase. Then what Lord Talent do you want to upgrade to the Supreme Lord Talent today? The Supreme Will asked. Zhou Zhou didn't hesitate and said. I want you to raise your protection of the Supreme Will from the Supreme level to the Supreme level. The protection of the Supreme Will came from the special Lord Talent rewarded by Zhou Zhou after he collected 10 Master God Tier's Lord Talents. As soon as it appeared, it had the Supreme Unique Lord Talent, and the effect was equally shocking. It could help the God Spirits under Zhou Zhou become Supreme Gods more easily. And now, the main pillar level experts of the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom and Zhou Zhou had already advanced from the Supreme God Realm to the Supreme Will Realm. Then this Supreme Protection of the Supreme Will did not meet his requirements. For this reason, upgrading it to the Supreme Lord Talent was something he needed to do now. It just so happened that the Supreme Will was by his side now. Then, he would ask the Supreme Will to help him improve. What a good opponent! The Supreme Will agreed with Zhou Zhou's choice. He raised his right hand and tapped Zhou Zhou's glabella like before. In the next second, Zhou Zhou felt a familiar and warm force surge into his mind from between his brows before spreading throughout his divine body. A moment later, a line of text suddenly appeared in front of Zhou Zhou. Your Supreme Unique Lord Talent, the Lord of Peace, has been promoted to the Supreme Lord Talent Protection of the Supreme Will. Your specific Lord Talent effect is as follows. Protection of the Supreme Will, Supreme Unique. Chapter 1883. Specific Talent Effect 2 Supreme Will, your and your subjects' will talent has reached the Paramount Will Realm. You can easily raise your Will Realm to the Supreme Will Realm compared to other life forms. Specific Talent Effect 3 Premier Heart, when you and your subjects advance to the Paramount God Realm, the probability of advancement increases by 50%, when you advance to the Supreme Will Realm, the probability of advancement increases by 10%. Zhou Zhou was very satisfied after reading it. Firstly, he had the will talent of the Supreme Will Realm. There was naturally no need to say anything. Actually, that Premier Heart had the probability of advancing to the Paramount God Realm increased by 50%. Even the success rate of advancing to the Paramount Will Realm increased by 10%. This was a 10% chance of success. This was already a terrifying probability. According to his understanding of the ultimate void great cosmos, countless supreme gods in the ultimate void great cosmos were willing to risk their lives to fight in the great cosmos in order to advance to the Supreme Will Realm, even if it could only increase the probability by 1%. If an expert said that it could increase their chances of advancement by 10%, they would be willing to sell their lives to him. The Supreme Will Realm could make experts so desperate. Zhou Zhou was filled with anticipation. The probability of him nurturing a Supreme Will Realm expert was already very high. Now, it has increased the probability of success by 10%. Tomorrow, the newly advanced Supreme Will Realm experts under him would probably double. At that time, the experts in the myriad worlds would probably make a fuss again. At the thought of this, Zhou Zhou could not help but laugh in his heart. At this moment, the Supreme Will's face revealed an expression of surprise and envy. The effect of your Supreme Lord talent is really extraordinary. Didn't the Supreme Will also cultivate the Supreme Sacred Body? If you want it, you can use the Supreme Sacred Body to cultivate it. Zhou Zhou said. The Supreme Sacred Body had the ability to create the Lord talent to begin with. It was normal for the Supreme Will to look surprised when facing his talent. What was with the envious expression? Don't you know how to do it too? Who said that I also cultivate the Supreme Sacred Body? The Supreme Will asked. You didn't cultivate the Supreme Sacred Body. Zhou Zhou was stunned for a long time before he reacted and said in shock. That's right. I didn't cultivate the Supreme Sacred Body to begin with. The Supreme Will looked at Zhou Zhou strangely. Before I obtained the Supreme Immortal Inheritance, I had already determined my will path. I couldn't change it even if I wanted to. I'm just using the Supreme Immortal Inheritance as a reference. I've only cultivated the parts that are suitable for me. I've never seen anything that involves the foundation of the will path. Why do you think that I'm cultivating the Supreme Sacred Body? I thought that since you gave me the inheritance of the Supreme Sacred Body, I thought that you had also cultivated the Supreme Sacred Body. Zhou Zhou said dryly. I didn't. The Supreme Will shook his head. My path is called water. I walk the path of water benefiting all things without competing. I can bestow the Lord talent on him, but my Lord talent is only water. You're the opposite of me. The path you took from the beginning was to gather thousands of Lord talents and your own path. I saw that your path is very similar to the path of the Supreme Sacred Body, so I handed his fundamental inheritance, the Supreme Sacred Body, to you. Actually, other than wanting to find a successor for me to manage the Supreme Great Cosmos for me in the future, another very important reason is that I want to find a successor for the Supreme Immortal. That's why you're the Supreme Lord Reserve Army. Could the Supreme Undying be? Zhou Zhou probed. You're right. The Supreme Will seemed to have seen through Zhou Zhou's thoughts and said with a smile, that's an existence in the eternal immortal realm. It's called the Supreme. I once studied under him for a period of time before he advanced to the eternal realm, but he was unwilling to take me in as his disciple. When he was about to advance, he handed over his Supreme Immortal Inheritance to me and allowed me to use it or pass it on to others. Then, he advanced to eternal immortality and left our world. With your aptitude, the other party is actually unwilling to take you in as a disciple. Zhou Zhou asked in surprise. He said that, there's a high chance that I can become an existence on par with him in the future, so he didn't take me in as his disciple. I'm also extremely confident in my future path. Therefore, even though I have the inheritance of that eternal immortal realm in my hand, I'm only using it as a reference. I didn't directly replicate his path. The Supreme Will said. Zhou Zhou was also very surprised. No wonder the Supreme Will casually handed this Supreme Sacred Body to him. It turned out that the other party's path was also a top-notch path that led straight to the eternal immortal realm. Common people's regal, cultivate well. Perhaps one day, you can enter the world of that eternal realm expert with me. The Supreme Will laughed. Then, his body gradually disappeared. At this moment, after these newly advanced Master God tier, Supreme God, and the 15 newly advanced Supreme Will Realm experts saw the Supreme Will leave, they finally flew over boldly. They surrounded him according to their strength. Greetings, Your Majesty. The 15 newly advanced Supreme Will Realm experts bowed respectfully to Zhou Zhou in unison. Congratulations on advancing to the Supreme Will Realm. Zhou Zhou smiled and nodded. From now on, the 11 of you will be consecrated by this Emperor's Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom's Supreme Will Realm. In terms of specific treatment, you will be treated the same as the consecrated by the Supreme Will Realm that you advanced to previously. I won't treat you badly. Thank you, Your Majesty. The 7 Supreme Will Realm experts said respectfully. As for the remaining 4 new Supreme Will Realm experts sent over, Zhou Zhou nodded at the 11 newly advanced Supreme Will Realm experts on his side. Then, he looked at the other 4 Supreme Will Realm experts. Do you want to continue cultivating here with this Emperor or return to your faction? The 4 Supreme Will Realm experts looked hesitant. Typically speaking, their mission here was to break through to the Supreme Will Realm. Now that the mission was completed, it was time for them to return and report. However, they could not bear to leave at this moment. This was naturally not the influence of Zhou Zhou's Supreme Lord Talent, the Holy King. Back when they joined, Zhou Zhou had controlled this Lord Talent to not affect them in this aspect. The reason why they were unwilling to leave was very simple. It was naturally because the environment of the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom was too good. It was so good that they could not bear to leave. They had a very strong premonition that as long as they continued to stay in the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom and work for this common people's regal, they would definitely be able to break through to a higher level. They might even have a chance to spy on the legendary willpower in the future. This was not exaggerated at all. All the new Supreme Will Realm experts present could sense this. However, they could not disobey the orders of the higher-ups. At this moment, the Regal Great Solar, Regal Great Lunar, God King Heaven Punishment, and the Spring Autumn Dharma Lord suddenly teleported in front of them with a solemn expression. I just got the news. The God King Heaven Punishment said solemnly. The illusionist clan suddenly sent a large number of experts to the Dusk battlefield. Among them, there are more than 100 Supreme Will Realm experts and more than 10 Willpower experts. They seem to be launching an all-out attack on our Supreme Great Cosmos. Currently, all the Supreme Will Realm experts in our Supreme Great Cosmos who can participate in the battle have already rushed to the Dusk battlefield. The Crimson Overlord also rushed over from the Crimson Great Cosmos with 20 Supreme Will Realm experts to resist the invasion of the illusionary race. With that, the Crimson Overlord also rushed over from the Crimson Great Cosmos with 20 Supreme Will Realm experts to resist the invasion of the illusionary race. The four of you. I know that you have just advanced to the Supreme Will Realm and like the cultivation environment of the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom very much. However, we are currently at the most dangerous moment of the Supreme Great Cosmos. Are you willing to save us? I can give you a choice. Those who are willing can come. If you don't want to come, you can stay. We're willing. X4. The four newly advanced Supreme Will Realm experts did not hesitate and said in a low voice. Chapter 1884. At this moment, they only had one firm thought left, and that was to fight for the Supreme Great Cosmos. Zhou Zhou was momentarily stunned, but he quickly came back to his senses and said, I want to go too. No. The God King Heaven Punishment refused directly. The Supreme Will has already ordered us not to let you participate in the invasion of the Illusionist clan. You can participate if you want, but you have to complete the test of the Eternal Continent first and become the second reserve army of the Supreme Lord. This way, you can come to the Twilight battlefield and participate in this war. Before that, you need to grow at your own pace. Zhou Zhou frowned. Now that the Twilight battlefield is so dangerous, the Supreme Will actually insists that I complete the test on the Eternal Mainland first? Third brother. The God King Heaven Punishment seemed to sense that Zhou Zhou was not very willing. He smiled and persuaded, since the Supreme Will said so, there must be a reason. The Supreme Will definitely not make a mistake in this aspect. Also, don't think that we can't stop them just because the Illusionist clan is aggressive and has many soldiers. Even though they have far exceeded us in terms of the number of experts in the Supreme Will Realm and the Willpower Realm, I can tell you very responsibly. These Supreme Will Realm experts and Willpower experts are still within our ability to deal with. Don't forget. The overall strength of our Supreme Great Cosmos can be considered one of the top 5 Great Cosmoses even in the entire Ultimate Void Cosmos. In addition, the Crimson Overlord will also come to support. The situation is actually not as bad as you think. Open up the Eternal Continent first. It won't be too late to help us when the time comes. We can still deal with the situation on the Dusk battlefield, but once the Illusionist clan finds out that we're strong enough to deal with them, they might continue to send more Supreme Will Realm experts and Willpower experts to attack us. At that time, we might really not be able to hold on. That's when I really need you. Even if you don't want to come over, we'll force you to. God King Heaven Punishment laughed loudly at the end. Hey, don't make it sound like my Eternal Continent is very easy to clear. Spring Autumn Dharma Lord said unhappily. Then, he looked at Zhou Zhou. Third brother, big brother is right. Let's not be in a hurry. Let big brother, second brother, Regal Great Solar, and Regal Great Lunar hold the fort. You can come over when the four of us can't hold on. Your Highnesses are right. The Regal Great Lunar said gently, Your Highness, I estimate that this battle will only become more intense towards the end. Your Highness, you don't have to rush over. This battle will last for a long time and won't end in a short period of time. Sooner or later, your highness will go on stage. Okay. Zhou Zhou took a deep breath. Since so many people advised him not to go, there was no need for him to disobey them. Moreover, he had just entered the Supreme Will Realm and had yet to completely control all the power of the Supreme Will Realm. It would not be too late to plan to go to the Dusk battlefield after he controlled all the power of the Supreme Will Realm. Seeing that Zhou Zhou had really listened to them, God King Heaven Punishment heaved a sigh of relief. They was really afraid that the third prince would be impulsive and ignore their advice to rush to the Dusk battlefield with his soldiers. Geniuses always like to be arbitrary. They were too familiar with the behavior of such prodigies. Fortunately, Zhou Zhou was not such a person. Even though he had some signs of wanting to go, he still listened to him in the end. At this moment, Zhou Zhou spoke again. Even though I can't go to the Twilight battlefield, I can fight with you in another way. Everyone was stunned. In what way? Then, they saw Zhou Zhou take out a world ring. They immediately hesitated thinking about this. Support. Third brother, it's good that you have this intention. Furthermore, I'm a lord. It's normal for me to have the thought of recruiting him when I see such an expert. In addition to some basic resources below the Supreme Will Realm, there are also 100,000 healing and resurrection treasures at the Supreme Will Realm. There are also 1,000 Will Holy artifacts. It should be able to increase the strength of our Supreme Great Cosmos Supreme Will Realm by about 7 to 8 times. God King Heaven Punishment, the Spring Autumn Dharma Lord, Regal Great Solar, and Regal Great Lunar were stunned. 100,000 Supreme Will Realm healing and resurrection treasures. 1,000 Will Holy artifacts. Not to mention the former, it greatly increased their ability to tolerate mistakes on the Twilight battlefield, allowing them to face the invasion of the illusionary race without fear. The latter's 1,000 Will Holy artifacts could even allow every Supreme Will Realm expert of them to have a set of Will Holy artifacts. There was still a lot left. Each person had a set of Will Holy artifacts. Wasn't this too fucking exaggerated? Even the most powerful multiverse faction in the Ultimate Void Great Cosmos probably could not allow every Supreme Will Realm expert to have a complete set of Will Holy artifacts, right? The God King Heaven Punishment could not react for a moment. The Spring Autumn Dharma Lord also felt inferior. This was because he had discovered that even if he took out all the Will Holy artifacts in his Spring Autumn treasury, it was still not enough to give the 50-odd Supreme Will Realm powerhouses in the Supreme Great Cosmos a complete set of Will Holy artifacts. Not to mention 1,000 Will Holy artifacts. He had actually taken out the Spring Autumn treasury previously to embarrass his younger brother? Chapter 1885. Thinking back, he blushed. At this moment, before the other experts could react, Regal Great Solar had already grabbed Zhou Zhou's world rings. When his willpower entered and he really saw the sea of treasures, 100,000 Supreme Will Realm treasures, and 1,000 Will Holy artifacts, his eyes immediately turned red, and his breathing quickened. Even though he had willpower transcending combat strength, he was still a Supreme Will Realm expert. They had never seen such a scene before. The others reacted when they saw this. They hurriedly injected the power of their will into the world rings and displayed similar reactions to Regal Great Solar. Seeing that everyone was silent, Zhou Zhou probed. Is that enough? If it's not enough, I have more. Critical hit. A true critical hit. Enough, enough. God King Heaven Punishment nodded bitterly. Spring Autumn Dharma Lord, Regal Great Solar, and Regal Great Lunar nodded silently. They finally understood why the common people's Regal had the confidence to say that they would use resources to nurture experts with willpower to nurture Supreme Will Realm experts. So what they said was true. Not only was the cultivation environment good. He really had resources. With this combination, no wonder Supreme Will Realm experts could be born every day. Third brother. God King Heaven Punishment took a deep breath and said seriously, with your support, we can still hold on even if the illusionist clan sends twice as many Supreme Willpower experts and Willpower experts. Don't worry and grow according to your own growth. We'll definitely be able to hold on. That's good. Zhou Zhou nodded and said, if you're still under pressure, tell me. I still have more Will Holy artifacts and Supreme Will Realm treasures. If it doesn't work, I'll spend some treasures to recruit some experts from the Ultimate Void Cosmos. We just have to ensure that they don't reveal the secret of the illusionist clan's invasion. If it really doesn't work, I still have a transcendent holy artifact. You guys should also have methods to transcend realms and use holy artifacts, right? For example, second brother, you can use a fishing rod that transcends the level of a holy artifact. With the transcendent holy artifact, I should be able to increase the power of the dusk battlefield. Zhou Zhou said. That won't be necessary. Spring Autumn Dharma Lord said dryly, third brother, I can use the transcendent holy artifact only because my transcendent holy artifact is only a non-combat holy artifact like a fishing rod. If it's really a combat type holy artifact, I won't be able to control it for long with the power of my will. Me too. God King Heaven Punishment added, even though I can also use transcendent holy artifacts, I can't use them for a long time. I'm still used to using high-level will holy artifacts in ordinary battles. The Regal Great Solar and Regal Great Lunar hesitated. They had a way to use the transcendent holy artifact for a long time, but it was not good to say such things now. God King Heaven Punishment and the Spring Autumn Dharma Lord had both rejected it. After some thought, they stopped talking for the time being. In any case, the current situation was not so urgent that they needed to borrow a holy artifact. Furthermore, they had something that transcended holy artifacts, but there weren't many of them. It would not be too late to borrow a holy artifact when the time came. Fine. Zhou Zhou had originally wanted to lend they the transcendent holy artifact that he had no use for. However, since they had said so, he would not lend it to them for the time being. Well, even though everyone had the means to transcend realms and use holy artifacts, not every Supreme Will Realm expert had a king who could provide a vast amount of willpower for he to use willpower skills that transcended holy artifacts indefinitely. Then, they chatted with Zhou Zhou for a while longer before leaving with the 4 newly advanced Supreme Will Realm experts. As for Zhou Zhou, after they left, he received the new experts on his side. He first gave the remaining 11 newly advanced Supreme Will Realm experts a set of Will Holy artifacts. Then, they were distributed to the other newly promoted Supreme Gods and Master God tiers. They each had a set of Supreme Divine Artifacts and Master God tier Divine Artifacts that were compatible with their own paths. Then, they returned to their respective armies. Then, Zhou Zhou began to calculate the strength of his main combat army. His original military strength was 342 Gai units 2,587 capital units 3,476,324,839,891 soldiers, 61,282,439,7607 God spirits, 74,351,819 true God tiers, 3,823,161 master gods, 857 supreme gods, 89 quasi-supreme will realm experts, and 1 supreme will realm expert. Including the 6,000 new Gai unit recruits, 100 capital units heavenly soldiers, 13,712,381 new master god tiers, 711 new supreme gods, and 11 supreme will realm experts. The troops under him had already reached 582 Gai units 2,687 capital units 3,476, 324, 734, 839, 891 soldiers, 6,128,243,007,607 God spirits, 74,351,819 true God tiers, 6,378,780 master gods, 988 supreme gods, 89 quasi-supreme will realm experts, and 3 supreme will realm experts. Zhou Zhou nodded in satisfaction after reading it. This increase was mainly due to the increase in the number of ordinary troops and supreme will realm experts. The normal military strength increased from more than 1,000 Gai units to more than 7,000 Gai units. It increased the total military strength by 6 times. The number of supreme will realm experts also increased from 22 to 33, an increase of a full third. Which meant, now, once he activated the king, he would instantly replicate the power of these 33 supreme will realm experts into his body. Furthermore, he would directly increase it by 5,000 times. When the time comes, he could directly augment the strength of 165,000 supreme will realm experts on the basis of his strength. What a terrifying number! One had to know that there were only more than 100 Supreme Will Realm experts in the Supreme Great Cosmos and the Scarlet Great Cosmos. If he were to go down as a king, it was unknown how many times he could crush the Supreme Will Realm experts of the 2 universes combined. Of course, this comparison excluded Supreme Willpower Realm experts like God King Heaven Punishment who had willpower combat strength. Even so, it was also quite terrifying. Zhou Zhou even wanted to challenge the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord and advance to the second reserve army of the Supreme Lord. However, after some thought, he still hesitated. Somehow, he had a feeling that with his current strength, he had a chance of winning if he challenged the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord, but the chances of winning weren't high. He was very strong. However, the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord who controlled the myriad world's chaos pool was inferior to him? It wasn't inferior to him. It's better to let Zhou fight sharpen himself in the eternal continent before challenging the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord. Zhou Zhou exhaled and thought. He was not in a hurry. It was still the same thing. He just had to take it slow. Time was on his side. Every day, he would become stronger. Then, he returned to the Reincarnation Sacred Palace and began to feel the feedback from the High Continent. After he defeated Revered Flame, the Supreme Continent had completely become his territory. Or rather, it had become his training ground. It was just like how the initial Ultimate Void battlefield was for Lord of 10,000 Evils, the Long River of Time and Space for Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord, and the Dusk battlefield for God King Heaven Punishment. Now, the Supreme Continent had also become the exclusive territory of Zhou Zhou, the third reserve army of the Supreme Lord. The Supreme Will had once said that the exclusive territory of every Supreme Lord Reserve had unique benefits for the Supreme Lord Reserve Army. Today, he wanted to understand what benefits this high continent had for him. He dispersed the power of his will, wanting it to envelop the entire continent. However, he realized that he could not do it. He, who had just entered the Supreme Will realm, did not have much of a leap in the power of will. It was very difficult for him to wrap his willpower around the entire high continent. However, this was naturally not a problem for Zhou Zhou. He directly activated the king and augmented himself with the power of 165,000 Supreme Will Realm wills. Zhou Zhou felt the pressure on his will immediately drain away. With just a thought, he enveloped the entire continent with his willpower. Then, he controlled the power of his will to gradually penetrate deeper. Soon, he reached the deepest part of the Supreme Continent, which was also the core. A pure white ball of light wrapped in endless laws and willpower stood quietly here for an unknown period of time in this place. Zhou Zhou took a deep breath and a vast amount of willpower entered it, beginning to recognize it as its master. Chapter 1886. There was only one word in Zhou Zhou's mind, run. Perhaps it was because he was the third reserve of the Supreme Lord, or perhaps it was because he had already passed the test of the Supreme Will, or perhaps there were other reasons. After the core of the High Continent started to recognize him as his master, it didn't take long for him to successfully recognize it as his master. After recognizing him as its master, a gentle power surged endlessly from the Supreme Continent and entered Zhou Zhou's will origin core. It began to strengthen Zhou Zhou's willpower and level. Zhou Zhou had a premonition. With the help of this power, even if he no longer cultivated the power of his will in the future, the power of his will could slowly increase. It could even be raised to the peak stage Supreme Will realm before he could no longer continue to increase. Zhou Zhou clicked his tongue in wonder and closed his eyes to sense the core of the High Continent. Was this the feedback that the highest continent gave him? No, this should be just basic feedback. If Zhou Zhou was right, there should be such basic will feedback in the Ultimate Void battlefield, the Eternal Continent, and the Dusk battlefield. He could completely recognize the Ultimate Void battleground as his master later. This thought appeared in Zhou Zhou's mind. Then, he continued to explore the improvements that the High Continent had brought to him. He had discovered the true benefits that the Supreme Continent had brought to him, the third reserve army of the Supreme Lord in no time. It's actually this. Zhou Zhou opened his eyes, and a glint flashed across them. The true benefit that the High Continent brought to him was that it was the source of the birth of the myriad worlds. After him, this Supreme Lord Reserve Army, completely acknowledged the High Continent as its master. The High Continent would officially activate its effect as the origin of the myriad worlds. This effect could be described as end of ascension. The High Continent would each open a door of ascension in the myriad worlds of the Supreme Great Cosmos. The geniuses of the various worlds or top-notch experts were all qualified to see this door and were qualified to come to the High Continent through this door to enjoy higher-end and richer cultivation resources and enter a higher realm. As for the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom of the Common People's Regal, as the only sovereign faction in the High Continent, it was extremely convenient to recruit these prodigies or experts to join his Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom. Zhou Zhou was even more ruthless. He could completely set up a rule on the High Continent. All living beings who wanted to officially walk on the High Continent needed to join the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom and become subjects of the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom. Otherwise, they would be treated as refugees from another world and would not be able to enjoy the basic benefits of the subjects of the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom on the high continent. They would not even be able to go to some special places. For example, cultivation holy lands like the Blessed Land. This was because it was prepared for the subjects of the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom. If they were not subjects of the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom, they naturally could not use such a place. With such rules, at least 90% of these paragons or experts from the myriad worlds would take the initiative to join the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom and become subjects of the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom. The various benefits of the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom and the uniqueness of the high continent were very difficult for any prodigy or expert to reject after all. From then on, Zhou Zhou could even say that all the prodigies in the myriad worlds were under his control. If this continued, the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom might realize the scene of all subjects being prodigies. After Zhou Zhou completely understood the use of the high continent, he could not help but nod in satisfaction. It turned out that the true use of the high continent was to recruit geniuses and experts from all over the world. Not bad, not bad. He liked it very much. Then, he immediately used all the land in the world belongs to the king to set this rule for the high continent. After this matter was completed, he flipped his right hand and a red fruit appeared in his hand. It was the divine tree fruit that heaven punishing God King had just given him. He looked at the divine tree fruit in his hand and checked it with his willpower. After finding no problem, he raised his head and ate it. The mutant fruit melted in his mouth and directly transformed into a vast and pure power of will. This power of will did not enter the stomach of Zhou Zhou's will body. Instead, as if it was attracted by the will origin core, it rushed crazily and turbulently towards the will origin core. Boom, boom, boom. It was like a wave hitting a reef. The power of will released by the mutant fruit kept attacking Zhou Zhou's will origin core. If not for the fact that Zhou Zhou was currently in the augmented state of a king and had the willpower of 165,000 supreme will realm experts augmenting him, the will origin core that he had just condensed would probably crack from this terrifying power of will. Zhou Zhou frowned slightly. He suddenly realized a problem. That was, this mutant fruit did not seem to be prepared for newcomers who had just entered the supreme will realm. Instead, it was prepared for at least a mid-level Supreme Will Realm expert or even an high-level Supreme Will Realm expert. However, he then regained his composure. Fortunately, he was not an ordinary Supreme Will Realm expert. He had a thought. The power of the 165,000 Supreme Will Realm experts augmented on him suddenly began to exert force together. They were like a pair of terrifying hands with infinite strength. In the blink of an eye, they needed the willpower that was like a tsunami into a powerless biscuit. Chapter 1887. At this moment, Zhou Zhou could clearly feel the quality and total amount of his willpower begin to increase crazily. At the same time, it rapidly approached the mid-level Supreme Will Realm. An unexpected situation happened in no time. He opened his eyes and realized that he had already arrived at an arena. This arena was clean, as if no one had fought here. And opposite a man in a red martial arts suit with the word marital written on his chest was standing opposite him, looking at him with a solemn expression. His forehead was covered in cold sweat, and his muscles were tense, as if he had encountered a terrifying enemy. And from the looks of it, it looked exactly like Zhou Zhou. Before the two of them could react to what had happened, some information appeared in the minds of Zhou Zhou and the man who looked like Zhou Zhou. After sorting out the information that suddenly appeared in his mind, the man opposite him said, "So you're my alternate timeline main body. Since you've already reached a mysterious realm called the Supreme Will Realm, at this realm, you need to kill and fuse with other alternate timeline main bodies to constantly improve yourself. Only then can you advance to a higher realm. And I am your first opponent in the alternate timeline." After saying that, he looked at Zhou Zhou and revealed a bitter smile. "Why am I so unlucky? I've never heard of the Supreme Will Realm, but a star martial venerable like me should not be your match." But his gaze on Zhou Zhou suddenly became firm and passionate. A true martial artist will never admit defeat before the battle begins. "I want to fight you." Zhou Zhou had wanted to tell him about the My Freedom transformation technique at first. The My Freedom transformation technique was a mystic technique that could protect the other party and allow the two to coexist by turning his alternate timeline main body into an alternate timeline clone. However, he was first stunned before he smiled seeing the other party's attitude. "What's your name?" he asked. "Zhou Zhou." Martial Venerable Zhou Zhou asked. "My name is Zhou Zhou too. Do you know that with your strength, I can make you die without a burial place with a thought?" You won't even be able to reincarnate. Zhou Zhou looked at him with interest. Understood. Martial Venerable Zhou Zhou nodded. Then, he placed one hand behind his back and raised the other hand to his chest. His expression was as calm as a lake. He looked like he was ready to fight. Then what's the point of fighting me like this? Battle is the meaning of a martial artist. Martial Venerable Zhou Zhou said calmly. Ha 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 ha. Zhou Zhou laughed out loud. He looked at Zhou Zhou, his eyes filled with admiration for his alternate timeline. The main body of an otherworldly martial venerable whose strength might not even be at the epic tier dared to send a firm battle request to a Supreme Will Realm expert like him. This was something that many Supreme Will Realm experts could not do. Just based on your current will, you will have the potential of a Supreme Will Realm expert in the future. Zhou Zhou smiled and said, then, I agree to your request. Next, I will fight you with my martial arts. I'll let you see the supreme martial path that belongs to the Supreme Will Realm. Okay. It's a deal. Martial Venerable Zhou Zhou's eyes lit up, and the flames in his eyes that belonged to martial artists burned even hotter. The two of them quickly fought. A moment later, Martial Venerable Zhou Zhou panted heavily and knelt in front of him. Zhou Zhou looked at him with interest. He had fought the other party with the physique of an ordinary person just now, but he still easily defeated the other party with a little Supreme Will Realm martial arts technique. This is your supreme martial arts. Even though Martial Venerable Zhou Zhou was in a sorry state, his eyes were terrifyingly bright. Yes. Zhou Zhou smiled and said, how do you feel? A realm I've never been in. However, I can feel that it seems to be the ultimate of martial arts. Martial Venerable Zhou Zhou asked. At most, it's top-notch. It's not the ultimate. Zhou Zhou smiled and shook his head. In the ultimate void great cosmos, there were wills that raised their martial arts to the transcendent level. That transcendent martial saint was ranked in the top 10 in the entire ultimate void cosmos. He was only at the Supreme Will Realm now, so it was naturally far from the ultimate martial arts. Zhou Zhou's eyes lit up. The martial arts that he was passionate about indeed had a lot of potential even in the wider world. The path that he loved had unlimited potential. At this moment, he felt extremely carefree. However, after that, his expression dimmed again. My future is bright, my ass. He was about to be killed by his alternate timeline main body, and his future was still bright. Seeing this, Zhou Zhou stopped teasing him and told him about the My Freedom transformation technique. As long as you agree to me using the My Freedom transformation technique on you, you can survive and my strength can increase. Either you live, but you become my alternate timeline clone, or you die at my hands. There's no other choice. You should feel it, right? Zhou Zhou glanced at the arena. This arena is the arena specially built by the will of the great cosmos for a Supreme Will Realm existence like me to fight you. Until the winner is decided, neither of us can leave here. I promise you. I'm willing to be your alternate timeline clone. Martial Venerable Zhou Zhou agreed readily. So fast? Aren't you going to consider it? Zhou Zhou asked with a smile. What's there to consider? Do I still have room for consideration? Martial Venerable Zhou Zhou smiled and shook his head. This is probably the best solution to the current situation. Blame me? Zhou Zhou asked. Resentment, definitely resentment. Martial Venerable Zhou Zhou said frankly, but you can't be blamed for this. I can't stop you from continuing to improve yourself, right? The fact that you can find the special mystic technique, the My Freedom transformation technique, is enough to prove that you're a kind person. It's better to lose to you and become your avatar than to lose to a despicable self and become a despicable avatar. Kindness. Zhou Zhou smiled. Ever since he rose to prominence, he had killed countless enemies of him. The current him was actually praised for being kind? What a strange experience. If that's the case, then I'll refine you into my alternate timeline clone now. Don't resist. I'll be fine soon. The current him wouldn't be afraid of any enemy. Sure. Martial Venerable Zhou Zhou asked. Zhou Zhou nodded and was about to activate the power of his will to use the My Freedom transformation technique. Wait a minute. Martial Venerable Zhou Zhou suddenly raised his hand. Why? Zhou Zhou put down his hand and asked with a smile. Martial Venerable Zhou Zhou said with a conflicted expression, after you refine me into your alternate timeline clone, you won't ask me to do something that goes against my principles, right? What are you thinking? Zhou Zhou asked disdainfully, with your strength, I can crush you with one finger. What do I need someone with your strength to do? I forgot to tell you that my profession is a lord and I have countless capable people under me. Even if it's a god spirit, I count them in billions. In terms of doing things, they are countless times better than you. Even though it's a little heartbreaking, it sounds quite reassuring. Marshal Venerable Zhou Zhou said awkwardly. He heaved a sigh of relief. It seemed that his main body was indeed quite powerful. He should not have to worry about the other party asking him to do anything outrageous. Then will I still have a chance to reach the peak after I become your alternate timeline avatar? Do I have a chance to reach the same height as you? Marshal Venerable Zhou Zhou thought of something and asked nervously. Of course. Zhou Zhou smiled and nodded. If you really reach the eternal immortal realm in the future, I have to congratulate you and me because you and I have the most trustworthy companion and comrade. I look forward to that day. Sure. Marshal Venerable Zhou Zhou silently remembered the name of the eternal immortal realm and nodded solemnly. Come. MHM. Chapter 1888. After the refinement was completed, Zhou Zhou felt a faint connection between him and Marshal Venerable Zhou Zhou. Zhou Zhou carefully sensed this connection and realized that not only could he make his alternate timeline clone become his body when he was on the verge of death, but he could also use the connection between the two to let him go to the timeline world where Marshal Venerable Zhou Zhou was. Zhou Zhou felt that it was a pity. However, after thinking about it, he gave up. He would go there when he had time in the future. The situation at the Dusk battlefield was very critical. He might have to personally go to the Dusk battlefield to fight for the Supreme Great Cosmos at any time. He really could not leave to go to the alternate timeline to play. Is this the feeling of being refined into your alternate timeline clone? Marshal Venerable Zhou Zhou looked at his hands in surprise and felt the surging mental strength in his body. He said in surprise, how did my mental strength increase to this extent? It actually began to nourish my body, causing my physical strength to increase. At this rate, it won't be long before I reach the Martial Saint realm. That's not mental power. It's some willpower left behind when I refined you into an alternate timeline avatar. Because this willpower is very compatible with you, it did not dissipate. Instead, it fused into your soul, allowing you to have a trace of willpower in the depths of your soul. This willpower will subtly modify your soul. It makes it easier for you to walk the path of will in the future. The current you not only has a very simple comprehension of laws, it's like a university student looking at a primary school student's math questions. Even if you comprehend the power of will, it's very easy for you to enter the Master God tier and Supreme God realms. As for the Supreme Will realm, there's a chance, but it mainly depends on your future efforts. This trace of willpower I left behind can at most open a path to the Supreme Will realm for you. As for how you walk or whether you walk fast, it's up to you. Marshal Venerable Zhou Zhou looked surprised. In other words, after becoming your alternate timeline clone, I became a peerless genius. A peerless genius. Zhou Zhou smiled. Have you seen a real peerless genius? I have. No, you haven't. Zhou Zhou shook his head. You've been cultivating martial arts for 12 years, right? You can reach the Martial Venerable Realm, Epic Tier, in 12 years. You can be considered a genius in your world, right? Martial Venerable Zhou Zhou asked. In the martial arts world he was in, he was one of the top 10 martial arts geniuses. In the last continent-wide martial arts conference, he had even broken into the 9th place before he was officially defeated. He was not the youngest among all the participants, but he was still considered the younger generation. To be able to enter the 9th place at such a young age, he was undoubtedly a true genius. Then how big do you think the gap between you and me is? I can't see clearly. Maybe. Marshal Venerable Zhou Zhou said honestly, the difference between us is too great. It's so great that I can't see the end. Zhou Zhou nodded and said calmly, the world I'm in is called the Supreme World. There are countless boundless universes, middle worlds and small worlds in the Supreme World. The life forms contained in them can be described as endless. But even so, I'm currently ranked in the top 10 with the least strength in this great world. And guess how long it took me to cultivate from an ordinary person to this point? I don't know. Marshal Venerable Zhou Zhou hesitated for a moment before shaking his head. He looked at Zhou Zhou with envy and shock in his eyes. If it was really as he had said, the other party was a top-notch existence even in many large and small worlds. The other party's strength was unimaginable for Marshal Venerable Zhou Zhou, who came from a different world. And then, Zhou Zhou, who was at the Supreme Will realm, gave an answer that surprised him even more. Less than a year. Zhou Zhou said calmly, in less than a year, I advanced from an ordinary person to my current realm. Impossible. Martial Venerable Zhou Zhou exclaimed, impossible. In less than a year, no existence can reach your realm. That's why I'm the strongest genius. No one can compare to me. Zhou Zhou smiled. It was true. It was quite satisfying to have his alternate timeline clone praise him like this. Martial Venerable Zhou Zhou did not finish. He was already completely shocked. With his knowledge, he could not imagine how an ordinary person could advance from an ordinary person to this realm called the Supreme Will Realm in less than a year. Did he cheat? Martial Venerable Zhou Zhou also had his own cheat, which was his extremely pure heart of martial arts. With this heart of martial arts, he could cultivate to the Martial Venerable Realm in such a short period of time. However, when comparing people, one had to die. When comparing goods, one had to throw them away. Compared to this person's talent, his cheat was simply unsightly. It was no wonder that he could achieve what he had to look up to in less than a year. He did not suspect that Zhou Zhou was lying to him. The two of them already had the connection between their main bodies and avatars after all. Even though he did not know what the other party was thinking, he could still tell from his tone that the other party disdained lying. Chapter 1889. You're my clone now. It won't be long before this arena dissipates. You and I will return to our respective worlds. Before I return, I'll give you a gift. With that, Zhou Zhou raised his right hand and pointed his index finger at the other party. A bit of willpower wrapped around an inheritance and flew into the space between Zhou Zhou's eyebrows. Zhou Zhou closed his eyes and accepted the inheritance. A moment later, he opened his eyes. The inheritance of supreme martial arts. As long as I absorb all of this inheritance, I might be able to advance to the Supreme Will Realm with my martial arts in the future. I might even have a chance to break through to Martial Dao. Zhou Zhou could not help but hold his breath. Even though he had just come into contact with the contents of the Martial Venerable level inheritance, he might not accept the martial arts inheritance above the Martial Venerable level because of the huge difference in strength. He could only accept the contents of the corresponding level when his strength reached the standard. Even so, he might also sense the vastness of this inheritance. He had a feeling that a Martial Venerable who had received this inheritance might definitely defeat hundreds of him. This was not exaggerated at all. If I cultivate the Martial Venerable level martial arts on it, I'm even confident that I can fight the Martial God. Martial Venerable Zhou Zhou muttered to himself. Martial God. It was the second major realm after the Martial Venerable realm and the highest realm he knew. Martial Venerable, Martial Sacred, Martial God. Even though there was only a one-word difference between the three major classes, there was a world of difference in terms of strength. Normally speaking, a Martial Venerable would definitely not be able to challenge a Martial Sacred. Under normal circumstances, a Martial Sacred would definitely not be able to challenge a Martial God. Of course, some geniuses, such as Martial Venerable Zhou Zhou, could challenge Martial Sacreds below the third level of the Martial Sacred realm with the strength of a Martial Venerable. Even so, he was also known as a once-in-a-thousand-year martial arts genius in the Martial Profound Continent. And this supreme martial art was only the part before the Martial Venerable realm, but it could actually allow him to challenge the Martial God realm by 2 levels. One could imagine the shock this brought him. Zhou Zhou's shocked expression towards Martial Venerable Zhou Zhou was very calm. He could tell what the other party was thinking at a glance. He smiled to himself. You're already so shocked by an epic tier challenging a lesser deity? Back then, I walked the same path as your main body. Many of the battles that he personally took part in had battles that were 2 levels higher. In the recent battle, he had even killed a low-level will powerhouse 2 levels above the Supreme Will Realm, shocking all the experts in the myriad worlds. Of course, Zhou Zhou naturally wouldn't be stupid enough to show off. There was no need to do so in front of his clone. They might not be able to see each other in the future after all. This is my gift to you. When you advance to the Supreme Will Realm in the future, we still have a chance to meet again. Zhou Zhou said. Only a Supreme Will Realm expert would begin to master the matter of transcending the alternate timeline. That was why Zhou Zhou said that there was a possibility of meeting him only at the Supreme Will Realm. I'll do my best. Martial Venerable Zhou Zhou said seriously. Zhou Zhou nodded. As soon as he finished speaking, the arena under their feet turned into specks of light and began to dissipate. Behind Zhou Zhou and Martial Dao Zhou, their respective worlds appeared. Behind Zhou Zhou was a majestic and vast supreme shrine. Behind the shrine was the vast world of the Divine Kingdom. Above the Divine Kingdom world, one could vaguely see the projections of the Divine Kingdom stars, the great lunar stars, and the sun stars. Behind martial Venerable Zhou Zhou was a vast continent. Zhou Zhou looked over and realized that this was a martial arts continent that only had master god tier god spirits dominating it. There were many secrets on this mainland that involved opportunities at the god spirit level and even the inheritance of a supreme god. However, such an inheritance naturally did not attract Zhou Zhou at all. He was not even interested in taking a look. Zhou Zhou turned around and left, disappearing. As for martial Venerable Zhou Zhou, he looked at Zhou Zhou's Divine Kingdom world with an infatuated gaze. In the end, it turned into a determined expression. "I'll create the same scenery," he muttered to himself. Then, he turned around and disappeared. In the reincarnation sacred palace, Zhou Zhou sat on the Dao comprehension futon again and continued to absorb the willpower in the mutant fruit to increase his willpower realm. At the same time, he circulated the origin of the heart to accelerate the refinement of the willpower of the mutant fruit. The origin of the heart was indeed worthy of being a top-notch inheritance in the heart great cosmos. After circulating the origin of the heart, Zhou Zhou felt that the speed at which he refined the willpower in the mutant fruit had increased by at least 4 to 5 times. As the power of his will gradually increased, Zhou Zhou could clearly sense that his next alternate timeline would attack him soon. And how long did this mean? Zhou Zhou vaguely knew the exact time. 10 years. Zhou Zhou was slightly surprised. 10 years, this time was naturally a blink of an eye for other Supreme Will Realm experts. However, to Zhou Zhou, who had cultivated for less than a year in reality, this was a completely unacceptable number. He didn't have that much time to spend on such matters. Fortunately, I have the All Origin as one that Big Brother gave me. It can accelerate the descent of the other alternate timeline main bodies in advance. With a thought, the seal in his hand quietly changed and he activated the All Origin as one. The moment it was activated, Zhou Zhou seemed to see himself in countless timelines. Some of them were doctors, some were salesmen, some were mutants, some were aliens, some were god spirits, some were demons, devils, creators. There were all kinds of timelines, and each timeline had a different scenery and self in the scenery. At this moment, one of the men looked up at Zhou Zhou. Zhou Zhou looked at the other parties. Swoosh! The two of them arrived at a battlefield again. Everywhere she looked, there were ruins and corpses everywhere. The air was filled with the smell of blood and corpses. At this moment, the two of them had already accepted the information given to them by the will of the ultimate void great cosmos. The man who looked extremely similar to Zhou Zhou but looked extremely down and out looked up at the surrounding scene curiously before looking at Zhou Zhou curiously. "You look a lot better than me. If you want to take my life, I'm afraid it's very simple. Just a thought away." Zhou Zhou nodded. As expected. The downtrodden man took out a pack of cigarettes from his right pocket, took one out, lit it up with a lighter, and blew out a smoke ring. He smiled and said, "Can you let me smoke before I die? Life isn't going well?" Zhou Zhou asked with a smile. "It's easy to tell." The downtrodden man smiled and said, "She's a little unluckier than many people, but she's also a little luckier than those who were born unlucky. But meeting you seems to be the end of what little luck I have. Just as well." The impoverished man took a deep puff of his cigarette and casually threw it on the ground. He stepped on it hard and shouted at the sky, "Fuck life. I'm going to live my entire life in another life. Fuck. Meeting me might not be unlucky." Zhou Zhou smiled and said something that shocked the down and out man. "Besides, who said I wanted your life? What do you mean?" The downtrodden man frowned slightly. Zhou Zhou looked at him and clicked his tongue. Then, he repeated what he had said to Marshal Venerable Zhou Zhou. "I agree." After the down and out man heard this, he agreed without hesitation. He sneered and said, "As long as what you say is true, those who don't agree with you are idiots." "A wise choice." Zhou Zhou smiled. Then, he spent a very short period of time refining the other party into his alternate timeline avatar. "What kind of gift do you want?" "I treat everyone equally." Zhou Zhou smiled. The downtrodden man pondered for a while before his eyes lit up. "Are you really omnipotent? You could say that. Then I want a system." The down and out man swung his right arm hard. "I want to live the life of a male lead." "Are you sure?" "I, Zhou Zhou, am 100,000% sure." "Then, as you wish." Chapter 1890. Even though it did not improve much, Zhou Zhou found it unbelievable when he thought about how the other party was just an ordinary person. The increase in willpower from refining the alternate timeline's main body is related to the other party's strength, but it's not completely related. There are also other factors affecting it. Zhou Zhou thought to himself. Then, he bade farewell to the delighted and downtrodden Zhou Zhou and returned to the reincarnation sacred palace. As for the system that this down-and-out Zhou Zhou had obtained, Zhou Zhou named it the Blazing Sun system. He had only used nomological methods to create a supreme god-level intelligent life form and stuffed it with a series of resources to cultivate from an ordinary person to a supreme god. He had built this system simply. To Zhou Zhou, building this system could be done with a thought, and the resources spent were not worth mentioning. Therefore, he did not care at all and continued cultivating the origin of the heart. While Zhou Zhou's main body was constantly improving his willpower, on the other side. At the Chaos Sea, Zhou Marshal had already brought Thanatos, Nazario, and 10,000 Master God tier advanced grade God spirits to the Chaos Sea. Then, they realized that not only were there space-time chaotic divine demons in the Chaos Sea, there was also a figure they had never seen before. It was an existence wearing a chaotic emperor's robe and a chaotic crown on its head. Its body was surrounded by countless chaotic airflows that were like swimming dragons. Thousands of nomological halos surrounded the other party, looking like chaos demon gods were alive. And when the other party saw Zhou Marshal and sensed his bloodline aura that came from the same origin as he but was of a higher level than he knelt down to Zhou Marshal without hesitation. Chaotic divine demon De Huang realm essence greets the great common people's regal. You are. However, in the face of Zhou Zhou's question, the chaotic light spot did not move at all, as if it was just an ordinary chaotic light spot. I'm ashamed. The chaotic divine demon De Huang lowered his head and said, protecting the chaotic divine demon race is the will of the heavens that has existed in my body since I was born. I don't have any special thoughts. I just know I have to do this. Zhou Marshal looked at the chaotic divine demon De Huang and suddenly said. Don't move. The chaotic divine demon De Huang was stunned, but it still obediently knelt on the ground and did not move. Zhou Marshal looked at chaotic divine demon De Huang and suddenly raised his hand to point at him. A great will pressure suddenly descended. When the chaotic divine demon De Huang sensed this will, he was instantly shocked. As a supreme will realm expert, he could naturally sense the horror of this will pressure. However, hadn't this common people's regal just advanced to the supreme will realm today? Why did it seem that even if the other party did not use that magical willpower secret technique to increase his strength, the power of his willpower was extremely deep, as if he was a supreme willpower realm expert who had cultivated for countless years? He naturally did not know that Zhou Zhou's willpower cultivation was synchronized with every of his clones in real time. That mutant fruit could directly raise a genius like God King Heaven Punishment from the middle stage Supreme Will Realm to the high-level Supreme Will Realm. The power of will contained in it was naturally extremely terrifying. Even though Zhou Zhou had only used a very short period of time to use the origin of the heart to absorb a portion of the willpower, even this portion of the willpower was equivalent to nearly 100,000 years of bitter cultivation by ordinary newly advanced Supreme Will Realm experts. It was precisely because of this that he felt that Zhou Marshal did not seem to have just advanced. Instead, he looked like a Supreme Will Realm expert who had cultivated for a long time. Furthermore, why did this common people's regal release such terrifying pressure on me the moment he saw me? What was he doing? The chaotic divine demon De Huang was terrified. At this moment, Zhou Marshal curled his right hand gently and a chaotic light spot flew out of the chaotic divine demon De Huang's body and slowly landed in Zhou Zhou's hand. The chaotic divine demon De Huang suddenly felt much more relaxed after this chaotic light spot flew out. It was as if the burden that had been suppressed in his heart for many years had instantly disappeared. This is... The chaotic divine demon De Huang was surprised. He had no idea what had happened to him. Why was it that with a hook of his highness finger and his body was so relaxed? What was that chaotic light spot? He stared at the point of light of the chaos beast floating in Zhou Zhou's hand. His eyes were filled with curiosity, but at the same time, there was vigilance and disbelief. Why didn't he know that there was such a thing in his body? If it wasn't for the common people's regal's help today, wouldn't he have to wear this thing for the rest of his life without knowing? Just the thought of it was terrifying. At this moment, Zhou Marshal was also looking at the chaotic light spot in his hand. He stroked his chin and looked at him, suddenly smiled and said, "Should I call you the remnant will of the chaos will? Or should I call you this divine being of the chaos will?" The surrounding god spirits and supreme will realm experts were immediately shocked. This light spot was actually related to the legendary Chaos Will? That was the Supreme Will and the Crimson Overlord's father. At its peak, even the Supreme Will and the Crimson Overlord could not defeat that existence. He had actually become this chaotic light spot? However, in the face of Zhou Zhou's question, the chaotic light spot did not move at all, as if it was just an ordinary chaotic light spot. Chapter 1891. This guy was quite good at pretending. If you still don't speak, I'll bring you to the Supreme Will. I also want to see what you are. After Zhou Marshall finished speaking, a few seconds later, a faint sigh came from the chaotic light spot. After Zhou Marshall finished speaking, a few seconds later, a faint sigh arrived from the chaotic light spot. With such a huge karma, you won't harm me, right? His Majesty is right. Zhou Marshall said indifferently, but are you really this divine being of the Chaos Will now? I don't believe that Lord Supreme Will and Lord Crimson Overlord couldn't completely kill you back then. You saw through me. The chaotic light spot sighed and said, this divine being has indeed completely perished in the hands of the Supreme Will and the Crimson Overlord, the two daughters I love the most. The current me is just a flesh and blood will derived from remnant flesh and blood. Then can I beg you to let me off? I might be a flesh and blood will left behind by the Chaos Will, but I've never appeared again all these years to disturb the Supreme Will and the rule of the Crimson Overlord. I've only been relying on this chaotic divine demon's body to survive in the fiend celestial world. If it weren't for the few chaotic divine demons under you bringing too many chaotic divine demons and letting you take any chaotic divine treasure, I wouldn't have taken the initiative to come out of the divine demon realm to see you. I had to expose myself to you. The chaotic light spot said helplessly. He just wanted to live well. Why was it so difficult? I can't make that decision. You can ask the Supreme Will. Zhou Marshall said calmly. The Chaos Will was related to the Supreme Will and the private matters of the Crimson Overlord back then. Zhou Zhou was not stupid. How could he take the initiative to involve himself in something that was not his business? When the Chaos Will heard Zhou Marshall's words, panic immediately appeared on its face. Don't tell the Supreme Will. Please don't tell the Supreme Will. He pleaded. Why are you so afraid of the Supreme Will? Zhou Marshall asked curiously, could you be still hiding a secret I don't know? It's not like that. The Chaos Will said in fear, I'm a will derived from the incomplete flesh and blood of the Chaos Will. I have personally experienced the battle between the three will transcendent level experts back then. It's no exaggeration to say that the battle back then was definitely considered a peak battle even in the ultimate void cosmos. The Chaos Will died an extremely tragic death. My divine body would still tremble subconsciously when I think of the battle back then. If I see the Supreme Will now, I'm afraid I'll be scared to death. Zhou Marshall. This was actually a cowardly will. You're so timid. How did you derive a will from the incomplete flesh of the Chaos Will? Zhou Zhou was speechless. I don't know either. It was condensed very suddenly. The Chaos Will said. Zhou Marshall shook his head and did not want to ask further. Don't worry. This era is no longer the same as your era back then. Zhou Marshall comforted. After so many years, the Supreme Will probably doesn't care about what happened back then anymore. And think about it. If the Supreme Will really wanted to attack you, would you be able to survive until today? You don't really think that the small divine demon realm you created can withstand the detection and attack of the Supreme Will, right? Zhou Marshall asked the other party in return. The Chaos Will immediately fell silent. It seemed like, it did make sense. Back then, the Supreme Will could even beat the Chaos Will to death. His will was derived from the flesh and blood left behind by the Chaos Will. The strongest was only at the low-level Supreme Will realm. How could the demon god world created by it avoid the detection and attack of the Supreme Will? Which meant, the Supreme Will might have known the location of him and his divine demon realm a long time ago, but it had just been too lazy to attack him. After figuring this out, the Chaos Will suddenly relaxed. Then I'll invite the Supreme Will over. Zhou Marshall asked when he saw how it relented like this. Please. The Chaos Will said after a few seconds of silence. Zhou Zhou nodded. Then, he thought of the void and said respectfully. I'm the third reserve army of the Supreme Lord. Please descend, Lord Supreme Will. I have something important to report to the Supreme Will. The chaotic light spot looked around nervously. He secretly gritted his teeth. He resisted the urge to escape after hesitating several times. At this moment, a voice sounded in the space where Zhou Marshall and the others were. Common people's regal, deal with it yourself. the Supreme Will said calmly. Then, there was no more sound, leaving behind the stunned Zhou Zhou and the others. Zhou Marshal couldn't help but laugh as he looked at the chaotic light spot in front of him. It seems like the Supreme Will doesn't care about you at all. He doesn't even want to show himself. The Chaos Will heaved a sigh of relief and smiled. It's good that he don't care about me. I like it when the Supreme Will doesn't take a small fry like me seriously. Zhou Marshal was speechless. This fellow was actually not ashamed but proud. However, this was indeed in line with the other party's way of survival. What do you think I should do with you? Zhou Marshal suddenly asked. The chaotic light spot immediately became nervous. He took a deep breath and said to Zhou Wu, as long as you don't destroy me, I'm willing to accept any punishment. Your desire to live is quite strong. I will. Zhou Marshal deliberately dragged out his tone, making the chaotic light spot even more nervous. He smiled and said, forget it, I won't scare you anymore. You just have to join this Emperor's Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom and become a general under this Emperor. You just have to do your best to conquer the myriad worlds and even the ultimate void great cosmos for this Emperor. That's simple. The chaotic light spot asked in disbelief. What else could it be? Zhou Marshal said indifferently, but this Emperor is not afraid to tell you that once you join this Emperor's Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom, you will never betray this Emperor again. You can only serve this Emperor wholeheartedly. The chaotic light spot quickly understood. This common people's regal's Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom probably had some special method to make the living beings who joined the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom never betray him. It was even to the extent that such a method could restrain a true Supreme Will Realm expert like him. After the chaotic light spot understood this, it was both afraid and envious. With such methods, it seemed like this common people's regal was not only powerful, he also had a group of loyal subordinates. Are you willing? Zhou Marshal asked. After a long silence, the chaotic light spot said firmly. I am willing. Compared to freedom, I still think life is more precious. Don't be so pessimistic. Zhou Marshal smiled and said, even though you will be absolutely loyal to me after you join my Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom. That doesn't mean I'm going to restrict your freedom. You don't even need to come to the army under this Emperor to accumulate strength. After joining this Emperor's Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom, you can do whatever you want. As long as you don't do anything outrageous, this Emperor will definitely not care about you. After thinking for a few seconds, the chaotic light spot smiled and said, I understand. Your Majesty doesn't want me as a subordinate. You just want me to eliminate a possible enemy. Clever. Zhou Marshal smiled. I understand. The chaotic light spot said. As soon as he finished speaking, he felt that he had mysteriously joined a country. At the same time, he also felt many buffs on him. Some of the buffs surprised even him, who had all the memories of the Chaos Will. What's going on with this Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom? Joining it alone actually benefits me so much. The remnants of the Chaos Will was completely shocked. With so many benefits and with all the memories and insights of the Chaos Will, he was even confident that he could recover his strength at the transcendent level of will in a short period of time. At the thought of this, he immediately felt grateful to Zhou Marshal. Chapter 1892. At the side, the chaotic divine demon De Huang was dumbfounded. How did things develop in this way? He had only seen the chaotic divine demons in the divine demon realm suddenly become weak. He did not know what had happened. In order to investigate this matter, he had specially followed the space-time chaotic divine demon. Only then did he unexpectedly found out that they were related to the famous common people's regal in the outside world. What made him unable to hold it and even more was that the common people's regal wanted the life source of these chaotic divine demons' chaotic divine treasures, and these chaotic divine demons under him were actually willing to really hand over their life source for that bit of master god tier divine artifact. In the beginning, the chaotic divine demon De Huang did not understand why the chaotic divine demon De Huang under him would forcefully complete a deal with the common people's regal even if it had to endure the two debuffs of weakness and decreased strength. However, after understanding the price that Zhou Zhou indicated, he expressed that he even wanted to exchange for it. It was just a chaos divine treasure that could be condensed repeatedly, but it could actually be exchanged for 4 master god tier divine artifacts of the same level? Did he have so many master god tier divine artifacts that he had nowhere to use? How did he think of such a ridiculous deal? Therefore, in order to understand the reason behind this, the chaotic divine demon De Huang decided to boldly take the initiative to come out and meet this legendary common people's regal. At first, it was fine. But when Zhou Marshall pulled out the chaotic light spot from his body, everything changed. What? That light spot was actually the remnant flesh and blood will of the Chaos Will back then? What? The remaining flesh and blood will of the Chaos Will was actually not a match for the common people's regal. It even begged for mercy from the common people's regal. Furthermore, not only did the common people's regal not accept the other party's begging, he even wanted to call the Supreme Will over. What? The Supreme Will was too lazy to appear and decided to let the common people's regal, Zhou Marshall, deal with it. What? The remnant will of chaos surrendered? And he looked so grateful. After this series of events, the chaotic divine demon De Huang did not know how to react. At this moment, Zhou Marshall's gaze landed on him. He subconsciously didn't dare to meet his gaze and involuntarily lowered his head. What about him? This chaotic divine demon De Huang is a good seedling with the potential to transcend experts. The chaotic light spot said, I can guide him on behalf of your majesty. With my guidance and the enhancement of your majesty's lord talent and other buffs, the other party has at least an 80% chance of advancing to the willpower level in the future. Zhou Marshall nodded. He had excellent taste. He could also tell at a glance that the other party had the potential of having willpower. If they nurtured him well in the future, they might be able to nurture him into a general under him. When the chaotic light spot saw this, it immediately knew that its majesty wanted to recruit him. It took the initiative to say, Your Majesty, let me talk about this. Let me persuade him. Even though he is arrogant, he will quickly agree. Hee. Zhou Marshall smiled and inadvertently touched the low-level will that transcended the holy sword at his waist. It's fine. This emperor will send him on his way if he didn't know better. The chaotic light spot was speechless. What could he say? He could only pretend not to hear and immediately go persuade Realm Essence. A moment later, Realm Essence, who had a nervous and expectant expression, walked over behind the chaotic light spot. Your Majesty, I'm willing to lead the entire Divine Demon realm to join you. Chaotic Divine Demon De Huang said respectfully. Welcome to the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom. This emperor will not mistreat any of your chaotic divine demons. Zhou Marshall did not make things difficult for him and agreed with a smile. As soon as he finished speaking, the chaotic divine demon De Huang and all the chaotic divine demons in the divine demon realm also felt the feeling of the chaotic colored light spot. They revealed a look of disbelief before the shock turned into surprise. I finally understand why there are so many top experts in the myriad worlds who yearn to join the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom, even if they have to be a subject. The feeling of joining is really good. The chaotic divine demon De Huang said in surprise. Thank you, Your Majesty, for allowing us to join the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom. After he returned to his senses, the first person he thanked was Zhou Marshall. Then, he bowed respectfully to the chaos-colored light spot and said, Thank you, Lord Chaos Will, for guiding me to join the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom. Sure. The Chaos Will smiled. He was very optimistic about the future of the chaotic divine demon De Huang. He might advance to the willpower level in the future after all. If he could really advance, he could also recover his willpower and strength. When the time came, they would definitely be able to occupy a place among the experts of the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom. Even though they were new, the performance of the Strong Alliance alone was enough to make the experts of the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom not dare to underestimate them. Even though the Chaos Will was only a will derived from flesh and blood. He had many thoughts. He no longer considered the advantages and disadvantages of joining the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom. He began to consider how to survive better among the experts of the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom. Zhou Marshall could tell what the Chaos Will was thinking at a glance, but he didn't care. As long as they didn't betray him and didn't affect the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom, their own growth, and didn't do anything that violated their bottom line, it didn't matter if they played any tricks in private. It could be used to train his subordinates' workplace survivability. This emperor still needs a large number of Chaos Divine treasures in the future. Chapter 1893. What do you suggest? Zhou Marshall asked the chaotic divine demon De Huang. The chaotic divine demon De Huang thought for a few seconds and said respectfully. Your Majesty, since the entire divine demon realm is now ruled by you, you can completely stop using the method of killing the goose that lays the golden eggs to obtain the chaos divine treasure. I have a better way. Tell me about it. Zhou Marshall's interest was piqued. He did feel a little strange about how he had obtained the chaotic divine treasure by killing chaotic divine demons in the past. Back then, they were not subjects of the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom, so even though Zhou Marshall felt that it was strange, he had never thought of changing it. Now that these chaotic divine demons had become his subjects, he could not use the same method to obtain chaotic divine treasures in the future. They killed the subjects in their territory to obtain what the monarch wanted after all. Those who did not know the exact situation would think that they were tyrants. Those who knew the exact situation would probably not have a good initial impression of him. Zhou Marshall still wanted to use another method to collect chaos divine treasures while protecting his reputation. As a well-known lord in the myriad worlds, reputation was very important. Zhou Marshall felt that he had to do it even if this method would reduce the income of the chaos divine treasure in the future in order to protect his reputation. Your Majesty, I created a chaos secret technique throughout these years in order to increase my strength. The chaotic divine demon De Huang said, this chaotic mystic technique can unite 10,000 chaotic divine demons to condense the chaotic origin energy for me. My cultivation speed will greatly increase with their help. I can also use this method to create a large amount of chaotic origin energy. Under the control of another secret technique, I can perfectly condense and compress this chaotic origin energy into a chaotic divine treasure. These chaos divine treasures are no different from ordinary chaos divine treasures. At that time, these chaos divine treasures can satisfy a portion of His Majesty's needs. How many chaos divine treasures can these chaotic origin energy you mentioned condense? Zhou Marshall asked. 10,000 of them. The chaotic divine demon De Huang said respectfully. Zhou Marshall nodded in surprise. This number was already equivalent to the chaotic divine treasures he obtained from killing so many chaotic divine demons every day. Now that he had the mystic technique of the chaotic divine demon De Huang, even if he did not kill the chaotic divine demons in the future, he would be able to obtain similar chaotic divine treasures. He would also be able to protect his chaotic divine demon subjects. The chaos secret technique you created is not bad. Zhou Marshall smiled and praised, in the future, use this chaos mystic technique to provide this emperor with the chaos divine treasure he needs. Don't worry. This emperor won't treat you badly. This emperor will send someone to send you all the resources you need to increase your cultivation. Also, your divine demon realm can be disbanded. Let's return to the supreme great cosmos to rest. Comprehending laws in a small world is ultimately not as convenient as comprehending laws in the great cosmos. Yes, Your Majesty. I will disband the divine demon realm in a while and let all the chaotic divine demons return to your command. The chaotic divine demon De Huang's eyes lit up as he immediately said. It was indeed not convenient to comprehend the laws in the demon god realm. The laws of the small world were not as perfect and high-end as the laws of the supreme great cosmos after all. Over the years, the divine demon realm had delayed the growth of many chaotic divine demon geniuses. If he wasn't worried that he would be dealt with by the Supreme Will and the Crimson Overlord the moment he came out of the divine demon realm, he would have long left that divine demon realm with all the chaotic divine demons. When the Chaos Will heard this, it sighed inwardly. This common people's regal had just become the master of their chaotic divine demons, but he had already provided such great help to their survival. He had even changed their previous survival methods. Should he say that he was indeed worthy of being the successor that even the Supreme Will valued? As expected, he had extraordinary courage. By the way, how many chaotic divine demons are left? Zhou Marshall asked when he thought of this. Reporting to Your Majesty, we are currently still 13,672 chaotic divine demons strong. Among them, there are 13,611 Master God tier chaotic divine demons, 61 Supreme God chaotic divine demons, and I'm the only Supreme Will Realm chaotic divine demon. Zhou Marshall nodded. Not bad. There were actually 61 Supreme God chaotic divine demons. As expected of the foundation left behind by the Chaos Will. Even though the other party had already died for so long, the faction he left behind was still powerful. Master God tier, stay behind. Set up in a chaotic divine demon's territory in the Chaos Sea that this emperor left for you. That will be your race's territory in the future. As for the supreme gods and you, join the main combat army under this emperor and fight with this emperor in the ultimate void great cosmos. Zhou Marshall said. Yes, Your Majesty. The chaotic divine demon De Huang agreed without hesitation. Zhou Marshall nodded. Then, they made another trip to the ruins of the Chaos of Death and obtained another 170 units of Chaos Divine treasures. Only then did they return to the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom and join the main army to conquer the myriad worlds. Now that the Supreme Mainland had been completely occupied by Zhou Zhou, their next goal was to conquer the entire Supreme Great Cosmos. This process was very simple. This was because the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom faction that Zhou Zhou was in was undoubtedly the third faction in the heavens in the entire Supreme Great Cosmos. Excluding the Supreme Will, the only top factions ranked in front of the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom were the Sun Divine Court and the Great Lunar Court. These two factions were high and mighty. They had almost never launched a war against the entire Supreme Great Cosmos. The God King Heaven Punishment and the Spring Autumn Dharma Lord had long lost their status as lords and were not qualified to conquer the Supreme Great Cosmos. It was because of all these reasons that Zhou Zhou became the first Lord faction in the history of the Supreme Great Cosmos to have the qualifications to conquer the entire Supreme Great Cosmos without any faction daring to question it. Who asked him to be a Supreme Lord Reserve Army? To put it bluntly, the entire Supreme Great Cosmos belonged to him. Now that the common people's regal had conquered the entire Supreme Great Cosmos from the beginning, it was just a test given to the common people's regal by the Supreme Will. If the Supreme Will chose not to test the common people's regal, he could even order the entire Supreme Great Cosmos to submit to the common people's regal. It was also for these reasons that after Zhou Marshal and them led the Blazing Sun Army and the other main combat troops on the journey to conquer the entire Supreme Great Cosmos, countless surrender letters flew towards the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom like raindrops. The Master of the Boundless Universe surrenders to us unconditionally. The Myriad Demon Divine Kingdom surrenders to us unconditionally. The Singer Divine Kingdom surrenders to us unconditionally. The Dark Moon Boundless Universe surrenders to us unconditionally. The Mechanical Low-Dimensional World surrenders to us unconditionally. Your Majesty. Feng Luo said to Zhou Marshal speechlessly, all the pre-attack forces along our route today have already surrendered to us. What about the second advance offensive route? Zhou Marshal frowned. Yes. Surrendering. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, Your Majesty, all the Lord factions on the second advance offensive route have already surrendered to us. What about the third advance offensive route? There's no movement from the factions on this offensive route for the time being. All right, then attack all the pre-attack forces along the way. Yes, Your Majesty. Feng Luo accepted the order and immediately led the Blazing Sun Army and the other main combat troops to move to the third offensive route. However, in less than half an hour. Reporting to Your Majesty. All the pre-attack forces on the third pre-attack route have sensed the change in our offensive route and are suspected to have discovered that our target has become them. All the pre-attack forces on this pre-attack route are rapidly surrendering to us too. They are all willing to give up the throne and join our Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom. A leader of a high-level Divine Kingdom faction even specially told me they have been waiting to surrender for a long time. Zhou Marshal. Chapter 1894. Zhou Marshal was almost unable to subdue the faction that surrendered. There was no choice. There were too many. At this rate, it wouldn't be long before the entire Supreme Great Cosmos completely returned to the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom. On the other side, in the palace of the divine capital of the Succubus Divine Kingdom of the Crimson Great Cosmos, Zhou 15 was dealing with government affairs. His current work was mainly to help the Divine Kingdom Lord faction under him establish the beginner grade Master God tier Lord faction. As the Chaos Divine Treasure gradually became richer, he could already create a large number of novice grade Lord deity level kingdoms at the same time. Furthermore, because they had enough talents and god spirits, they established a novice grade Master God tier kingdom very quickly and took a very short time. Just like today, Zhou 15 planned to establish a total of 10 beginner grade Master God tier kingdoms in the Scarlet Great Cosmos. In the future, when they established more beginner grade Master God tier kingdoms, they would choose a portion of beginner grade Master God tier kingdoms and use them as the predetermined goal to advance to an intermediate Master God tier kingdom in the future, preparing for the advancement conditions of a higher level territory in the future. At this moment, he flipped to a memorial. He opened it and quickly revealed a look of joy. Today, there are actually 6 high-level Lord factions of the Crimson Great Cosmos that have advanced to the beginner grade Master God tier kingdom. Okay. Men! He shouted. A Master God tier level Succubus Master God tier wearing a Master God artifact walked over and said respectfully and charmingly. Greetings, Your Majesty. Gather the Emperor's Succubus Divine Kingdom army to conquer these 6 newly advanced beginner grade Master God tier Lord factions. Zhou 15 threw the memorial in front of the other party and said coldly, you must conquer all the Lord factions of these 6 beginner grade Master God tier kingdoms by today. Yes, Your Majesty. The Succubus Master God tier said respectfully with no fear on her face. With the help of Zhou 15's resources, all the god spirits in the succubus divine kingdom were equipped with a complete set of divine artifacts, true god tier divine artifacts, master god tier divine artifacts, and supreme divine artifacts without exception. The current succubus divine kingdom was more than 10,000 times stronger than before. It was just 6 newly advanced beginner-grade master god tier lord factions. As long as they did not mobilize supreme will realm experts, it was easy for them to deal with them. Even if the other party suddenly took out a supreme will realm expert to stop the invasion of the succubus divine kingdom, Zhou 15 was not afraid. If they dared to invite external help, he would also dare to invite them. Wasn't he just a supreme will realm expert? It was as if they did not have any. As for the gods of the succubus divine kingdom, they were naturally puzzled as to why their succubus god lord could suddenly take out so many divine artifacts. If this was in the supreme great cosmos, there might be curious gods who wanted to find out the secrets inside. However, in the crimson great cosmos, there was such a benefit. The god spirits of the crimson great cosmos believed in the rule of survival where the strong were respected. As long as you were strong enough, they would definitely listen to you and won't cause you any trouble. Therefore, after Zhou 15 accidentally displayed his strength to instantly kill a grade 4 supreme god, the succubus divine kingdom no longer had any officials who dared to be sarcastic to him. They would do whatever Zhou 15 said to make Zhou 15 feel comfortable. As for why their majesty was so strong? That's naturally because our emperor was born to be so strong. The first time Zhou 15 heard such words, he laughed. What was the old saying again? Right. There will be great scholars to argue in my favor when I become stronger. Then, he didn't say anything else and turned to leave. Zhou 11 and Zhou Shire were leading their supreme gods and supreme will realm experts to explore the deepest depths of Tianjun's corpse. Along the way, they killed many chaos fiends and obtained more than 50,000 units of chaos divine treasures. Furthermore, they had used force to subdue 5 supreme will realm experts. Just as they approached the core area of Tianjun's corpse, a person of foreign race who was holding a white holy flower in his hand and wearing a white robe walked over from afar. In the team, many supreme gods and supreme will realm experts revealed looks of fear after sensing the pressure of this existence. This was because it was the pressure of a willpower expert. He glanced at Zhou 11 and the rest and smiled slightly, charming all living beings. The holy flower in his hand swayed slightly, emitting an aura that made even god spirits and willpower level powerhouses infatuated. The supreme gods and supreme will realm experts under Zhou 11 could not resist the other party's methods and were all confused. In a place that they could not detect. The will origin nucleus in their brains were constantly releasing the power of the origin of will. It surged into the other party's body and the holy flower in their hands through the aura they emitted. Zhou 11 and Zhou 11 frowned slightly as they felt extremely wary and hostile. This fellow actually used his means on them without a word the moment they met. At this rate, in less than a quarter of an hour, the supreme gods and supreme will realm experts under him would be sucked dry of their willpower by the aura emitted by the holy flower in the other party's hand and die. He did not dare to underestimate the other party. Zhou 12 and him immediately used King and instantly increased their strength to the low-level willpower. Chapter 1895. Oh! Surprise appeared in the woman's eyes. With a flash, she arrived in front of Zhou 11 and Zhou 12 with the holy flower in her hand and sized him up. What are you two doing? You couple low-level supreme will realm experts actually suddenly have the strength of a low-level will realm expert. Then how will this method be used if it's used by a willpower expert? Will one have the strength of an eternal realm expert? Is this the inheritance of a willpower expert? Or an eternal realm expert? Tell me and hand this method to me. I can spare your lives. Don't think that you can survive under my hands just because you have the strength of a low-level willpower. I'm a middle-level willpower expert. If I want to kill the two of you, I can do it with a thought. Zhou 11 and Zhou 12 looked at each other. Then, Zhou 11 said, this is my self-created willpower skill. As for whether it can allow your willpower experts to use this willpower skill to have the strength of the eternal immortal realm, I'm not too sure. I didn't raise this will skill to the level of will transcendence. I see. The people of foreign races at the supreme will realm smiled. If not for Zhou 11 and Zhou 12 having the willpower of a supreme will realm expert with 100,000 units, they might really not have been able to hold on. The supreme will realm expert of the people of foreign races continued to smile, looks like even though you're only at the low-level supreme will realm. But looking at the potential of this willpower skill, it's very likely that you will advance to the willpower level in the future and become existences like me. Come, Tell me your willpower technique, cultivation method and cultivation comprehension. I'll help you correct it. That won't be necessary. Zhou 11 smiled and said, cultivation comprehension concerns one's future path. It's really inconvenient to reveal it. Oh. The smile of the woman from the people of foreign races became even more charming. Little brother, are you really going to reject my request? Something bad is going to happen. Then we'll have to experience it. Zhou 11 said, we only killed a low-level willpower expert not long ago and obtained a lot of loots. I'm about to teach a middle-level willpower user. How strong is he? The gaze of the woman from the people of foreign races froze. Suddenly, he opened his mouth and exhaled. A rich floral fragrance spewed out of his mouth and landed on Zhou 11 and Zhou 12's faces. Even though Zhou 11 and Zhou 12 had nearly 200,000 Supreme Will Realm experts' willpower augmenting them, he still felt a little dizzy in the face of the sudden attack of this middle-level transcendent level expert. They could only subconsciously put on low-level holy artifacts. In the next moment, a jade-green spike appeared out of thin air in the hand of this woman of foreign races. This jade-green spike exuded a pressure that surpassed that of a holy artifact. It was shockingly a middle-level holy artifact. He held the spike and shook it slightly. He actually grew 2 arms, and both arms held a mid-level beyond holy artifact spike. Then, he stabbed Zhou 11 and Zhou 12 in the forehead without hesitation. He held the spike and shook it slightly. He actually grew 2 arms, and both arms held a mid-level beyond holy artifact spike. Then, he stabbed Zhou 11 and Zhou 12 in the forehead without hesitation. At this moment, the ruthlessness he displayed was completely different from his smiling performance just now. Even though he was a middle-level willpower expert, his strength on the surface far exceeded that of Zhou 11 and Zhou Shire, who were low-level willpower experts. However, he treated Zhou 11 and Zhou 12 with all his might to kill the 2 of them. When his emerald green spike landed on Zhou 11 and Zhou 12's glabella, an invisible membrane quietly appeared, isolating them from the emerald green spike's attack. Transcend holy artifacts. This person from the people of foreign races could not hide his surprise. Transcendent holy artifact. Even he only had 1 holy artifact of this level. It could be seen how rare holy artifacts were. As for these 2 guys, their true strength was clearly only at the low-level Supreme Will realm. Putting aside how the 2 of them could control a holy artifact, how could the 2 of them possess a holy artifact at this stage? This short moment of shock and hesitation allowed him to give Zhou 11 and Zhou 12 a chance to catch their breath. Zhou 11 and Zhou 12 immediately came back to their senses. Then, the 2 of them immediately distanced themselves and looked at him warily. He had been too careless. Zhou 11 and Zhou 12 thought. They had almost died in this fellow's hands before they even fought. An expert who could reach the mid-level willpower realm was indeed not simple. Then, they silently placed a low-level transcendent holy artifact around their will origin core that could protect it. At this moment, the woman from the people of foreign race had already recovered from her shock and her gaze landed on them again. Transcend holy artifacts. You actually have transcendent holy artifacts. 2 of them. He whispered. Ever since he saw Zhou 11 and Zhou Shire, it was the first time he looked so shocked. Do you like it? Zhou 11 took a step forward and faced the other party. He smiled and said, if you are willing to become this emperor's subordinate, this emperor can also give you a set of holy artifacts that can allow you, even if you are a middle-level willpower surpassing expert, to have the ability to protect yourself or even fight against an upper-level willpower surpassing expert. Not to mention this woman from the people of foreign race, even the group of Supreme Gods and Supreme Will Realm experts under Zhou 11 and Zhou 12 looked at Zhou 11 dumbfounded. No, Your Majesty. How did you have the courage to speak to a middle-level willpower powerhouse who had the advantage in such a disadvantageous situation? And you want to recruit him as your subordinate? It's hard to say if they are willing to spare our lives now. Where did we get the right to say such things to each other? The female from the people of foreign race was also stunned when she heard this. Then, she burst out laughing. Little brother. The woman from the people of foreign race smiled and said, I have to admit that you are very talented at joking. You've successfully amused me. To reward your courage and humor, I can tell you my sage name. My sage name is Divine Lord of Heavenly Fragrance. Remember this name, because your life will be taken by the owner of this sage name. Swoosh. His figure instantly disappeared. In the next second, it had already appeared in front of Zhou 11. At this moment, Zhou 11 still had a faint smile on his face, as if he was not afraid of this powerful middle-level willpower powerhouse called Divine Lord of Heavenly Fragrance. He looked at the sacred Lord of Heavenly Fragrance who had already appeared in front of him and smiled faintly. That might not be the case. He flipped his right hand and a pink eye appeared in his hand. It was the Median Transcendent Holy Artifact Seductive Holy Eye. Become my slave of the Holy Eye. Zhou 11 said calmly. As soon as he finished speaking, the seductive Holy Eye in his hand suddenly emitted a shocking pink light. This pink light instantly shone on the Divine Lord of Heavenly Fragrance. The Divine Lord of Heavenly Fragrance's pupils constricted as an extremely strong sense of danger made him reveal a terrified expression. No. Just as he shouted no, his eyes quickly became confused. He looked like the Supreme God and Supreme Will Realm experts who had been bewitched by his holy flower. The only difference was that the Divine Lord of Heavenly Fragrance was clearly even more confused and irreversible. Holy Artifact Willpower 2 Slave of the Holy Eye. Consume the source power of the seductive Holy Eye to permanently enslave a strong person at the middle level or below the middle level of will transcendence. After using the Slave of the Holy Eye, it takes a long time for transcendental holy crystals to replenish the internal source power. When the source power is replenished, it can enslave other strong people again. The maximum number of strong people that can be enslaved by the seductive Holy Eye, 0/3. A moment later, the Divine Lord of Heavenly Fragrance's expression returned to normal. He looked at Zhou 11 with respect and fanaticism. It was like a slave looking at his savior. Greetings, Master. He said fervently. Zhou 11 nodded slightly. Chapter 1896. The Supreme Gods and Supreme Will Realm experts present were stunned when they saw that Zhou 11 had actually subdued a mid-level transcendent level expert with just a few words and that the other party was so loyal to Zhou 11. Then, they became fanatical. This was their majesty who could always do things that others could not. At this moment, Zhou 11 was no less excited than them. It was not only because he had subdued the first low-level willpower powerhouse, but more importantly, he had just secretly tried the king and discovered that this willpower powerhouse could also be added by his king. Then, it could also be increased by 5,000 times. Which meant, the Divine Lord of Heavenly Fragrance could directly possess the strength of 5,000 mid-level transcendent level experts just by relying on this Heavenly Fragrance Holy Lord. At the thought of this, Zhou 11 could not help but hold his breath. The strength of 5,000 middle-level willpower practitioners. What terrifying strength was this? It was probably comparable to the strength of an upper-level transcendent expert. He thought of another problem. With the current king, could Zhou fight directly challenge the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord? The Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord was only at the middle stage Supreme Will Realm. His true combat strength was probably at the low-level Will Transcendent Realm or the mid-level Will Transcendent Realm. As long as the other party did not have the strength of an upper-level Willpower Transcendent, he was definitely not his match. He thought for a moment and shook his head. Never mind. Why be so worried? Let Zhou fight deal with the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord himself. I'd better work on Tianjun's corpse. He looked at the Divine Lord of Heavenly Fragrance in front of him and asked. As a mid-level willpower expert, why did you come to this small place where Tianjun's corpse is? Reporting to your majesty, the Heavenly Fragrance Holy Lord said respectfully, I received news that Tianjun once obtained an eternal immortal realm martial cultivation technique when he was alive. It's called the Heaven Breaking Fist Sect. I'm only doing this for this eternal immortal realm martial arts. Eternal immortal realm martial cultivation technique. Zhou Zhou was shocked. Yes, your majesty. The Divine Lord of Heavenly Fragrance said respectfully. No wonder. I was wondering why even the willpower experts were attracted here. As expected, there's the inheritance of an eternal realm expert. I just didn't expect it to be an eternal immortal realm martial cultivation technique. Zhou 11 was shocked. Martial arts. Actually, it was not a mainstream cultivation path in the ultimate void great cosmos. This was because its cultivation process was too difficult, there were too many shortcomings that needed to be made up for, and its methods were too simple. Even the thoughts of martial arts cultivators would be restricted by the path of martial arts. They would gradually become a little boorish and believe in the creed of strength. Of course, even though it had so many flaws, because martial arts was the purest offensive cultivation path, once it successfully cultivated and became a peerless martial arts expert, its attack power was shockingly strong, almost surpassing all cultivation paths. Most cultivators of the same level were unwilling to provoke these boorish people because they were too lethal. They would either die or be injured the moment they attacked. On the other hand, cultivators went out to compete in this aspect. Therefore, martial arts cultivation techniques were very attractive to cultivators of any level. The higher the level, the more attractive it was. Such an eternal immortal realm martial cultivation technique was even more precious than some complete inheritances of eternal immortal realm experts. This was because once one cultivated a martial arts cultivation technique of this level, it basically meant that they were invincible. As for most cultivation techniques and immortal techniques that cultivated other paths, they might not be invincible among their peers. Zhou 11 finally understood why the treasures in Tianjun's corpse were so important. This was equivalent to a complete legacy of an eternal realm expert. Who wouldn't be tempted? Do you know how many willpower transcendent level experts are in this place where Tianjun's corpse is? Zhou 11 asked. Apart from me, there are currently 5 willpower experts at the core of Tianjun's corpse. Furthermore, I heard that there are at least 3 willpower experts who are setting off from other great cosmos to the place where Tianjun's corpse is. The Divine Lord of Heavenly Fragrance said. Are there any high-level willpower powerhouses? Zhou 11 asked again. There are 2 of them. Zhou 11 and the rest secretly clicked their tongues. Good God! A martial arts type eternal immortal realm inheritance actually attracted so many will transcending experts. Even Zhou 11 and Zhou Shire, who had just obtained a mid-level subordinate, felt a lot of pressure after hearing that. Still, it was only pressure, not a sense of life and death. After the 2 of them used their king, even if they could not directly defeat the high-level willpower powerhouses, they could definitely protect themselves after all. Therefore, the 2 of them also wanted to take a risk for this martial arts inheritance. Let's go. The 2 of them led their subordinates deeper into the core area without hesitation. Other than me, among the other 5 willpower experts, there's a low-level willpower expert, 2 middle-level willpower experts, and the last 2 upper-level willpower experts. This heaven-breaking fist-sex martial arts inheritance is the legendary eternal immortal realm inheritance after all. Ordinary low-level experts won't dare to snatch it. Chapter 1897. Most of the people who dare to come are mid-level or even high-level willpower powerhouses. The Divine Lord of Heavenly Fragrance said. Bring this emperor to find those 2 middle-level powerhouses. A dazzling light appeared in Zhou 11's eyes. This emperor wants to take down them. Hearing this, the Divine Lord of Heavenly Fragrance knew that His Majesty was probably going to use the method he had just used to take down the 2 mid-level willpower powerhouses. However, not only did he not resist, he was even looking forward to it. Yes, Your Majesty. I know where those 2 fellows are. I'll lead the way. Zhou 11 nodded in satisfaction. The seductive holy eye was indeed a mid-level transcendent holy artifact. This control effect felt like it was equivalent to the transcendent version of the Holy King Lord talent. When Zhou 11 saw the Divine Lord of Heavenly Fragrance in front of him, he also realized something. As his strength gradually increased, there should be more and more willpower transcendent level experts under his main body in the future. The supreme rank, the only Lord talent Holy King, felt a little behind. This Lord talent was limited by its grade after all. It was only effective on life forms below the Supreme Will realm. I have to get my main body to beg the Supreme Will to help my main body upgrade this Lord talent to the transcendent level, the only Lord talent. Otherwise, even if we encounter more willpower experts in the future, we won't be able to subdue them. Sigh, it's not a good thing to level up too quickly. I can't keep up with all the facilities. Zhou 11 complained in his heart. At this moment, Zhou 12 asked, then what's the background of the only low-level willpower expert who dared to come? That's an expert with a low-level will that has transcended the realm, but his true combat strength is that of a high-level will. The Divine Lord of Heavenly Fragrance said, it's said that he once received the guidance of a top-notch willpower transcendent expert. Later on, that willpower expert advanced to the eternal realm and left the ultimate void great cosmos. Zhou 11 and Zhou 12 looked at each other. Good God! It actually had the same origin as the Supreme Will. They were all disciples of great teachers. No wonder a low-level willpower expert dared to snatch the eternal immortal realm inheritance with a group of mid-level and high-level willpower experts. The Divine Lord of Heavenly Fragrance was speechless when she saw Zhou 11 and Zhou 12's shocked reactions. No, were the emperors already so shocked when the low-level willpower came to snatch the inheritance? Then, Your Majesty, have you ever thought that you have the strength of the lower Supreme Will realm to snatch the eternal immortal realm inheritance from they and the willpower experts? It was like a group of lions hunting prey. Suddenly, a young leopard came over and said that not only did he want to snatch the prey they wanted to capture, but he also wanted to beat them up. Your Majesty, wake up. In terms of being ridiculous, you guys are the ones being absolutely ridiculous. A moment later. Under the lead of the Divine Lord of Heavenly Fragrance, Zhou 11 and Zhou 12 found the first mid-level willpower expert. This mid-level expert was sitting cross-legged in an ancient cave abode. He used the power of his will to observe the core area of the entire place where Tian Jun's corpse was, wanting to use this to find the inheritance of the heaven-breaking fist. This was also the first thing most willpower powerhouses wanted to do after coming here. With the strength and thickness of his willpower, they could sweep through the entire land of Tian Jun's corpse to find what they wanted after all. However, the inheritance of the heaven-breaking fist sect was the martial arts inheritance of the eternal immortal realm after all. After these willpower experts who came here used this method, they could not find this inheritance. In the end, they could only walk through Tian Jun's corpse step by step like the Divine Lord of Heavenly Fragrance or other Supreme Will Realm experts searching for treasures and try to find the heaven-breaking fist inheritance through this careful search method. Even though they had yet to find the inheritance of the heaven-shattering fist, they had used this method to find many treasures at the Supreme Will Realm and the Willpower Realm. Many experts sighed. Even if they did not find the inheritance of the heaven-shattering fist, just based on their current gains, this trip was not in vain. Many experts sighed. Even if they did not find the inheritance of the heaven-shattering fist, just based on their current gains, this trip was not in vain. He is called the Primordial Ash and was also known as the Primordial Lightning Divine Lord by the other willpowers of the Ultimate Void Great Cosmos. This guy's other aspects are average, but his offensive ability is ranked in the top 30 among the many mid-level experts. Zhou 11 and Zhou 12 looked over. This expert from the people of foreign races was wearing the life-knocking sacred armor and holding the 1000 Calamity Dragon Spine halberd. His left arm was wrapped in broken multiverse chains, and his right hand was holding the circulating divine light of incense. His spine was the long-handled weapon box that carried the 1000 Calamity Dragon Spine halberd. The baleful aura covered the sky and earth, causing a blood cloud to appear above his head. Blood-colored lightning dragons roared and appeared from time to time. It was not the manifestation of laws, nor was it the manifestation of divine power. It was the manifestation of the will of this powerhouse. It was not the manifestation of laws, nor was it the manifestation of divine power. It was the manifestation of the will of this powerhouse. To be able to have such a will transform, he was indeed a ferocious person. It was worth it for me to subdue it with my seductive holy eye. At this moment, the primordial ash slowly opened its eyes and its gaze landed on the Divine Lord of Heavenly Fragrance. Zhou 11 and the rest were ignored. It was just a group of Supreme Will Realm and Supreme Gods. He did not care about them at all. If he was willing, he could kill even more Supreme Will Realm experts and Supreme God spirits with a glare. Divine Lord of Heavenly Fragrance. What are you doing here? He said lightly. Primordial Lightning Divine Lord. The Divine Lord of Heavenly Fragrance said loudly, I was sent by my master to specially invite you to join our Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom. The Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom. The Primordial Lightning Divine Lord pondered for a moment and said, is it the common people's sacred king who has just risen and is known to have the greatest potential? Zhou 11 and Zhou 12 looked at each other. This was the first time they had heard the term sacred king from an outsider. It seemed that even though his main body had just become a sacred king, his reputation had already spread throughout the ultimate void great cosmos. That's right. The Divine Lord of Heavenly Fragrance smiled faintly and said, that's my master. He felt helpless. If he hadn't attacked Zhou 11 and Zhou 12 the moment he arrived, he wouldn't have been enslaved by His Majesty before knowing His Majesty's true identity. If His Majesty had told me his identity in advance, I might have surrendered directly. That was a sacred king. It was very likely that he would become the leader of the ultimate void great cosmos in the future. If he could become his subordinate, even if the other party's strength and realm were inferior to his on the surface, he might really be willing to become the other party's subordinate. When the Primordial Lightning Divine Lord heard that the Master of the Divine Lord of Heavenly Fragrance was really the common people's sacred king with the greatest potential, a shocking lightning flashed in his eyes. Swoosh! In the blink of an eye, he arrived in front of the Divine Lord of Heavenly Fragrance and asked, where is the common people's sacred king? We are the common people's sacred kings. Zhou 11 and Zhou 12 stood out and said. Then, Zhou 11 thought for a moment and said, to be precise, it's the clone of the common people's sacred king. However, our consciousness is connected to our main body, and our strength is almost the same. It's not a problem for you to treat us as the common people's sacred king. The primordial lightning divine lord looked at Zhou 11 and Zhou 12 with thunderous eyes. That lightning-like willpower made Zhou 11 and Zhou 12 frown slightly. The two of you are the clones of the common people's sacred king? Your strength is not much different from the common people's sacred king. Primordial lightning divine lord asked. You could say it's exactly the same. Zhou 11 said. Primordial lightning divine lord frowned slightly. It was really as the legends said. On the surface, the strength of the common people's sacred king was only the strength of a newly advanced supreme will realm expert. He thought for a moment and said. Your Highness Sacred King, you can subdue me. But I have two conditions. As long as your Majesty fulfills my two conditions, I, Lei Ji, will immediately bow down to your Majesty, the Sacred King. Oh. Zhou 11 smiled and said, what condition? Tell me. Firstly, your Majesty should personally receive my full strength attack. As long as your Majesty can survive one strike, the first condition will be fulfilled. Second, I've been trapped in the mid-level willpower realm for many years. After your Majesty subjugates me, please help me break through the bottleneck and advance to the high-level willpower realm. I, Lei Ji, only have these two conditions. I wonder if your Majesty will agree. When Zhou 11 heard that, he first sized him up and said. Can you guarantee that you will never betray me after you join me? Your Majesty, you're a sacred king. If I join you and betray you again, it's equivalent to betraying the will of the ultimate void great cosmos. Even a high-level willpower powerhouse wouldn't dare to do this. Don't worry, your Majesty. The primordial lightning divine lord said in a low voice. All right, this emperor agrees. Zhou 11 did not hesitate and immediately agreed. Chapter 1898. Okay. The primordial lightning divine lord praised, Your Majesty is so bold. Your Majesty is so bold. The primordial lightning divine lord praised. Not to mention whether he could withstand it, this courage alone was enough to make the primordial lightning divine lord praise him. As expected of a sacred king personally chosen by the will of the ultimate void great cosmos. This courage alone was outstanding. At the side, the divine lord of heavenly fragrance was a little worried. The strength that his Majesty had displayed just now was only the strength of a low-level will. It was a little strenuous to face him. Could he withstand the full strength attack of the primordial lightning divine lord like this? Even though this fellow only had the strength of a mid-level willpower on the surface and looked comparable to him, in fact, because he was extremely good at offense, the full strength assault he could unleash was comparable to a casual strike from a high-level willpower powerhouse. Your Majesty, can you really block it? At this moment, the primordial lightning divine lord also said. Your Highness, I'll attack you next. If you feel that the situation is not right, I can immediately withdraw my attack. Don't worry, Your Majesty. Even if you can't block my full strength attack, I'm willing to join His Majesty's faction and serve His Majesty. Your spirit has conquered me. The primordial lightning divine lord also said. Even though they had just met not long ago, the courage and confidence of the common people's sacred lord had already stunned him, a mid-level powerhouse. Of course, this was not the most important reason. The most important reason was that since even the ultimate void great cosmos willpower personally admitted that the other party's potential was the number one in the ultimate void great cosmos, the other party would definitely have a high chance of advancing to an high-level willpower expert in the future. Even if he spent a few million years, tens of millions of years, or even longer, he might not be able to advance to that level. Therefore, even though his current strength far exceeded this common people's sacred king, as long as the other party did not die in the future, he would almost certainly surpass him and become a true powerhouse standing at the peak of the ultimate void cosmos. Since that was the case, why wouldn't he join him and become his trusted subordinate? The opportunity to become the subordinate of a top powerhouse in the future was not something that everyone could easily obtain. Now that this opportunity was placed in front of him, he could not let it slip away easily. Thinking of this, he glanced at the divine lord of heavenly fragrance and felt that it was a pity. This guy was lucky enough to become the first willpower subordinate of His Majesty's. His status and identity would definitely be completely different if he could also become the first subordinate of the common people's sacred king. After Zhou 11 heard primordial lightning divine lord's words, he smiled and said. You're overly worried. Don't worry, just use your methods. This emperor can accept it. The primordial lightning divine lord's gaze froze. As a top expert, he felt proud after hearing what Zhou 11 said. It seemed like he had to use his full strength. Otherwise, if his all-out attack was really blocked by the other party, where would his pride as a peerless expert be? At that time, even if he really became His Majesty's subordinate, His Majesty would not think too highly of him. Sure. Be careful, Your Highness. The primordial lightning divine lord said in a low voice. His sacred body slowly floated up and stood in the sky. The primordial lightning divine lord looked at Zhou 11 and the others below as lightning flashed in his eyes. In the next moment, the world suddenly fell silent. In the void, wisps of chaotic airflow appeared out of thin air and began to spin in reverse, forming dense chaotic clouds. The primordial lightning divine lord stepped on the chaotic clouds with his bare feet. 9 long and narrow gaps appeared in the clouds, revealing the boiling black lightning liquid behind. That was his mid-level transcendent holy artifact primordial lightning pool. He formed a lightning seal with his left hand and pointed at the absolute beginning thunder pool with his right hand. Condense. Following this decree that crossed time and space, the absolute beginning thunder pool suddenly condensed into a needle-sized absolute beginning lightning. A million bolts of primordial lightning surrounded by a halo of will pierced through the restriction on Tianjun's corpse. Every bolt of lightning emitted a pitch-black light that devoured all will. Zhou 11 and Zhou 12, who were locked on, frowned slightly and were secretly shocked. What an astonishing offensive method! It was definitely an offensive method with a superior will. Go! With a command from the primordial lightning divine lord, the million bolts of primordial lightning suddenly gathered together, forming a primordial lightning pillar that stole the brilliance of the world. This primordial lightning pillar even crushed a portion of the area where Tianjun's corpse was. It carried a surging holy might and vast destructive aura as it crushed towards Zhou 11. Zhou 11's expression turned solemn. He took a deep breath and instantly activated King. At this moment, the power of all the citizens of the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom, God Spirits, Supreme Will Realm Experts, and the Divine Lord of Heavenly Fragrance, a middle-stage Supreme Will Realm Expert, was added to Zhou 11's body and instantly increased by 5,000 times. At this moment, Zhou 11 felt a world-shaking power surge into every part of his body, making him feel as if he was omnipotent. Even the primordial lightning pillar in front of him was not worth mentioning. He felt the power of the will in his body that far exceeded that of ordinary mid-level willpower powerhouses. Endless confidence surged in his heart, and then it was calm. Chapter 1899. At this moment, he had already confirmed it. He had underestimated the combined strength of 5,000 mid-level willpower powerhouses. The current him relied on the power of 5,000 will transcenders and the power enhanced by the other kings. His realm was undoubtedly comparable to the power of a high-level will transcendent. Swoosh! A sword appeared out of thin air in his hand. This sword was called the Blood Abyss Sword. It was one of the few mid-level willpowers that Zhou Zhou had obtained that surpassed the holy artifact. It was a weapon that he could try out. He gently raised the Blood Abyss Sword and stood in front of him, blocking half of his face. Half of his face was his own, and the other half was the body of the Blood Abyss Sword. He had yet to master any willpower skills other than that of King, let alone transcendence skills. It was naturally unrealistic for King to resist this primordial lightning pillar of the primordial lightning divine lord. However, it didn't matter. He couldn't, but the Blood Abyss Sword in his hand could. He only needed to infuse the power of his will into the Blood Abyss Sword and let the Blood Abyss Sword release the power of its superior transcendence skill. Wake up! Zhou 11 said softly, Blood Abyss, show the world your ability to slaughter everything. Swoosh! A blood-red eye suddenly appeared on the Blood Abyss Sword. This eye was completely blood-colored. On the surface, it looked very calm, but if one observed carefully, they would discover that in the depths of this eye, there was a crazy will that seemed to want to kill all the life forms in the ultimate void great cosmos. Puff! A blood-colored spatial rift was split open in the void. This blood-colored spatial rift was like a wound that contained a major artery. A large amount of blood-colored seawater surged out and instantly formed a blood-colored waterfall behind him. Pu, 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 pu. Blood-colored spatial cracks appeared out of thin air. It was as if an extremely cruel executioner was wantonly dismembering a criminal, cutting wounds on his body, and these wounds were all dripping with hot blood. Splash! Countless blood waterfalls appeared behind Zhou 11 and formed a terrifying sea of blood behind him. In the blink of an eye, figures that were innocent, resentful, in pain, or crazy struggled with all their might in this sea of blood, but they could not escape from this vast sea of blood. They could only be devoured by the sea of blood and become a dirty and bloody part of it. At this moment, the primordial lightning pillar was less than a light year away from Zhou 11. With the speed of the primordial lightning pillar, it would arrive in front of Zhou 11 in the blink of an eye and obliterate him and the members behind him. However, Zhou 11 did not panic at all. He only made one movement. He raised his sword and pointed it at the primordial lightning pillar and the shocked primordial lightning divine lord behind it. "Go!" he said softly. As soon as he finished speaking. Ha 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 ha! The entire sea of blood behind him erupted with a crazy and exaggerated smile. Then, like a group of real-life forms, the sea of blood actually rushed out and swept past Zhou 11's position in the blink of an eye. It rushed in front of the primordial lightning pillar and swallowed it. The full-strength attack of the primordial lightning divine lord did not even last a breath in front of the boundless sea of blood. Just as primordial lightning divine lord was in shock, the boundless sea of blood had already arrived in front of him and was about to devour him in the next second. "Your Majesty, spare my life!" the primordial lightning divine lord shouted in panic. As soon as he finished speaking, the boundless sea of blood that had already swept up most of his body turned into clear water in the blink of an eye, splashing onto primordial lightning divine lord. Blood sea, vengeful spirits, angry roars. Everything disappeared, and the sky was clear. Primordial lightning divine lord looked confused. The divine lord of heavenly fragrance and her other subordinates were also very shocked. The aura of that move just now frightened them so much that they did not dare to do anything. Even the divine lord of heavenly fragrance, a mid-level willpower expert, did not dare to speak. High-level willpower combat power. He roared in his heart, he was excited. This was definitely the combat strength of a high-level willpower user. His Majesty actually had the body of a low-level Supreme Will Realm expert and easily used the combat strength of high-level will. No wonder. No wonder the will of the ultimate void great cosmos thought that the common people's regal had the greatest potential in the ultimate void great cosmos. Who could have the greatest potential if he did not have the greatest potential? No existence could. Then, he thought of something and hurriedly said to the still stunned primordial lightning divine lord. "What are you waiting for? Come and greet your king." The primordial lightning divine lord finally came back to his senses. He took a deep breath and cupped his fists at the divine lord of heavenly fragrance. Then, he quickly flew in front of Zhou 11 and knelt down respectfully. "Primordial lightning divine lord greets your Majesty. Welcome to this Emperor's blazing sun divine kingdom. You're the same as the divine lord of heavenly fragrance. You're both high officials of this Emperor's blazing sun divine kingdom. Every 100 years, you can choose any transcendent level treasure from this Emperor's treasure vault. Every 10,000 years, you can choose any transcendent holy artifact from this Emperor's treasure vault. If you make a contribution, the reward will be considered separately." Zhou 11 said with a faint smile. "Your Majesty, are you serious?" the two transcendent experts exclaimed. Transcendent level treasures and transcendent holy artifacts were all extremely precious treasures. They were no exception even in the ultimate void cosmos. Furthermore, the price of obtaining them was only the duration of their effectiveness. 100 or 10,000 years. Wasn't this something that happened in the blink of an eye for them and other experts with transcendent wills? What price was this? This was clearly a free gift. Needless to say, meritorious service was another matter. An idea appeared in their minds. The emperor that they are following is too domineering. The second thought was, I've followed the right person. The divine lord of heavenly fragrance and the primordial lightning divine lord looked at each other and said respectfully. "We pledge our lives to serve your Majesty." Zhou 11 smiled and nodded. He was also very satisfied. It meant that after he used the king, with the addition of a new subordinate of a mid-level transcendent level powerhouse, he could instantly obtain the full strength of 10,000 middle-level transcendent level powerhouses. If the augmentation of the previous 5,000 mid-level willpower beyond their powers only allowed him to touch the edge of the strength of high-level willpower. WTH the support of the full strength of these 10,000 willpower transcendent level powerhouses, he could truly step into the range of the strength of a high-level willpower powerhouse. Which meant, he was now at true high-level willpower with transcendent combat power. He could challenge his second brother, the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord, without any worries in the next week's battle. Zhou 11 thought. He already had a premonition. With his current strength, challenging the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord could only be described with two words. Easy peasy. He was so confident even though they had never really fought. This was how strong people were. They had absolute knowledge and confidence in their strength. If he could win, he would definitely not hesitate, not knowing if he could win. Then, Zhou 11 did not think too much about it. Primordial Lightning Divine Lord. Do you know how many willpower transcendent experts there are nearby that we can find? Zhou 11 asked directly. The Primordial Lightning Divine Lord knew what His Majesty was going to do. This was to collect all the willpower transcendent level experts in Tianjun's corps as subordinates. He was delighted. If it was before he joined the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom, he would probably reject such a thing without hesitation. Being a guide was somewhat offensive for experts like them. In fact, apart from strength, experts also valued reputation. However, after joining the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom, the Primordial Lightning Divine Lord naturally had to look at this matter from the perspective of the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom. Then, he naturally hoped that the more transcendent level experts under the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom, the better. The stronger the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom was, the more it would prove that there was nothing wrong with joining. The brighter his future would be after all. Your Majesty, I know the location of all the willpower transcendent level experts in the land of Tianjun's corpse. The Primordial Lightning Divine Lord chuckled. Chapter 1900. Sure. Zhou 11 nodded in satisfaction. With the Divine Lord of Heavenly Fragrance and the Primordial Lightning Divine Lord leading the way, it seemed like he was destined to gain a lot today. The Eternal Continent. Zhou Fight was leading the army of the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom to conquer this mainland. They had a much bigger appetite due to the addition of many Supreme Will Realm experts, Supreme Gods, Master God Tiers, and other God Spirits under their command. They decided that they were going to take down half of the Eternal Continent and the River of Space and Time. This way, the remaining area of battle between the Eternal Continent and the Space-Time River Sacred Domain was about 2/5. After fighting for about 2 hours, Zhou Fight suddenly trembled. Then, he came back to his senses and a smile appeared on his face. Zhou 11 and Zhou 12 actually gave me such a big surprise. If that's the case, then we can change our goal today. Zhou Fight thought to himself. Then, he called Bai Yun over. Greetings, Your Majesty. Your Majesty, do you have a new decree? Bai Yun asked curiously when she arrived. Bai Yun. From now on, there's no need to have any scruples. Fight the Eternal Continent and the River of Space and Time with all your might. Zhou Fight said in a low voice, if you encounter a willpower transcendent level expert, don't worry. This Emperor will personally attack. We will strive to conquer the Eternal Continent and the River of Time and Space within 2 days. Then, we will defeat the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord and let this Emperor become the second reserve for the Supreme Lord. Yes, Your Majesty. Bai Yun's eyes lit up and she immediately accepted the order. He had long felt that with His Majesty's strength and faction, there was no need to be so timid when fighting in the Eternal Continent and the long river of time and space. Now, His Majesty's order was exactly what he wanted. Seeing that Bai Yun agreed so readily, Zhou Fight nodded slightly. Previously, he did not let the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom fight freely in the Eternal Continent and the River of Time and Space because he was afraid of alarming the 3 historical heroes with transcendent wills on the Eternal Continent. Now, with the augmentation of the king, his strength had already steadily transcended the high-level will. With such strength, Zhou Fight naturally did not have to be as timid as before. He could even take the initiative to participate in the battle and lure the 3 historical heroes with transcendent wills over. Then, they would be destroyed in one go. In this way, there was nothing to worry about before they took the initiative to look for the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord. The more Zhou Fight thought about it, the more he felt that his idea was good. And so, when they were fighting in a place called the Dark Wilderness, Zhou Fight directly attacked and used lightning-like methods to eliminate the 5 historical heroes at the Supreme Will Realm here. It shocked everyone. Then, the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom army quickly cleaned up all the historical heroes in this area without a leader. Continue. Next area, the Graveyard of Deities. Bai Yun ordered. This Graveyard of Deities was a relatively large area in the Eternal Continent. There were also many historical heroes inside. Just the Supreme Will Realm historical heroes numbered 12. If it was in the past, it would be a tough nut to crack for Zhou Fight and the others. However, it was naturally nothing to the current Zhou Fight. He could just clean it up along the way. At the same time, the 3 historical heroes who were cultivating in the core area of the Eternal Continent also opened their eyes when Zhou Fight attacked. This common people's regal really can't help but attack. The historical hero on the left said with a faint smile. He came from a people of foreign race called the Hurok tribe. He had experienced many hardships in the ultimate void cosmos before becoming a low-level willpower transcendent level expert. Unfortunately, he was surrounded and killed when he fought with a group of will transcendence experts for an incomplete eternal immortal realm inheritance after all. Later on, he was lucky to encounter the Spring Autumn Dharma Lord and was forcefully pulled out of the eternal continent with a special transcendence technique. He regained his consciousness and became a special existence, a historical hero. Even though he would have to listen to the Spring Autumn Dharma Lord from now on, it was already a huge blessing to be able to return from death. Therefore, he didn't care about such matters and obediently became a fighter under the Spring Autumn Dharma Lord. Ever since he received the Spring Autumn Dharma Lord's order to become one of the test contents of the Common People's Regal, he had become extremely curious about this Common People's Regal whose strength was only at the Supreme Will Realm. With the Supreme Will Realm body, he had the combat strength of a will transcendent level. Such a genius was extremely rare even in the ultimate void great cosmos. Unfortunately, when the Common People's Regal fought in the Eternal Continent, other than attacking once when he didn't understand the rules at the beginning, he never attacked at any other time. Due to the test rules set by the Spring Autumn Dharma Lord, he could only obediently guard his area with the other two transcendent level experts, waiting for the Common People's Regal to attack. They had thought that they would have to wait for a long time. They felt that with the strength of the Common People's Regal, it was still very difficult to resist the attacks of the three genuine strong wills after all. The other party would probably take a long time to accumulate strength. Only when they had accumulated enough strength would they dare to expose their strength and fight them to their heart's content. They did not expect that it had only been a few days. They had been waiting for the Common People's Regal to take action. How was this a simple attack? This was clearly a challenge to them. Come on! Another dark, obsidian-like will of the people of foreign races spoke in a dull voice.